Okay.
Time having arrived, I call the meeting of the Committee on Finance to order. And as it has become customary, please rise and help us salute our beautiful flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, councilors and guests, I hope you had a great Easter weekend. Well, I did, you know. But we do have a slightly, not so long, but long agenda. So without any further ado, Mr. Clerk, item 1.
Item 1, we have the acceptance of the minutes of the March 18th, 2024 Finance Committee meeting.
That will be accepted and placed on file.
Item 2, we have the reappointment of Ms. Jean Fuller-Jones of Brockton, Mass. to serve on the Council on Aging as a member for a 3-year term expiring April 2027. Invited, Ms. Jean Fuller-Jones.
Madam Jones, please come forward and state your name to the clerk and any statement that you have for us, and I thank you for your service on the council.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Jean Fuller-Jones. I've been a Brockton resident for 30-somewhat years, and participating in the Council on Aging, serving on the board for the last 3 years, and I think we've made some great strides in how we function as a board and looking at our role as a board and the role of the board to be outreach and ambassadors for the Council on Aging, and we're the only Council on Aging, as far as I know, to be participating in next month's senior celebration in Dedham that encompasses most of the senior servicing agencies and facilities in the South Coast area. And we're going to have, the Brockton Council on Aging is going to have a table there, staffed entirely by board and Friends board members. So I'd like to continue that work.
Councilors, any questions? Councilor Min?
I would just like to, for the record, state that Jean Fuller-Jones, for over the years, has always volunteered and participated in all sorts of good works here in Brockton. I recall going back to the Brockton Community Corporation, the BCC, when Robert Jenkins was the executive director, and we worked together with Richard Bath and some other really good people. So I overwhelmingly endorse her for this position, and at the appropriate time, I would like to, certainly after Councilor Nicastro has some comments, would like to move to approve her.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Nicastro.
Thank you. Good evening, Mrs. Fuller-Jones. It's so good to see you.
Good evening. Thank you.
So you've already served 3 years, and that's terrific, and you're willing to serve 3 more.
Yes.
What have you accomplished in these 3 years?
I think one thing for me, I've learned a lot about the council. I've gotten to know many of the resident members and volunteers. We, as a board, looked at our bylaws and made some revisions to them. We looked at everyone's terms and made sure we were all up to date and legal with the city clerk's office and everything. And this is that in the outreach piece I'm really proud of. We participated in the public, the first responder city event last summer. Again, a table staffed completely by board members and Friends board members. So we're really doing more than showing up at the meetings and saying, yes, we approve of that.
That's great. Thank you for your continued service.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Councilor Minicello.
Well, I would like to make a motion to approve her appointment.
Second.
A motion has been properly made and properly second. All those in favor of moving it forward? All those opposed? Thank you for all that you do in the council.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And I look forward to seeing you at our next event.
Number 3, sir.
Item 3, we have the reappointment of Ms. Joyce Foren-Voris of Brockton, Mass. to the Conservation Commission as a member for a 3-year term ending March 2027. Invited, Ms. Joyce Foren-Voris.
Ms.
Good
Forrest,
evening.
welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you. Anything would you like to say to our esteemed colleagues from the council here? Because this is an appointment to the
It's been an interesting,
Committee.
truly an interesting 3 years. One of the reasons that I really wanted to ask to be appointed for another 3 years is just because I see so many climate issues occurring with all of the incredible water that we've had and flooding that we've had and stormwater issues that we've had. And truly, the wetlands are sponges to be able to absorb that, to be able to help to mitigate that. And so being able to be part of protecting that and to make sure that that's done well is really important to me. So it's just the timing, I think, was just about right. Yeah. It's been fascinating.
Councillor Minichel.
I would just like to point out that this is one of those committees that does an incredible amount of work, an incredible amount of time, energy, and effort. And Ms. Voris has been instrumental in making sure that the issues get timely heard and very thorough, very conscientious. I certainly wholeheartedly recommend her for another term. I think that you might want to go see your physician to see if really this is something that you should do mentally, but, but I mean, you really,
It keeps me young, really.
I'm sure it does, because it certainly is a lot of effort and keeps your mind working, that's for darn sure.
Yeah.
Thank you for your service in terms of what you're doing. It's an incredible amount of work.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
And you do it
it's a
quite
really
well,
wonderful
well.
group of people, too.
Councillor Castro, followed by Fowler.
Mrs. Voris, good evening.
Hi.
Thank you for your willingness to be reappointed. You've probably learned so much in these first couple of years, and now you're going to put it all to good use, right? Thank you for that
And the learning
willingness.
curve is continuing because the state regulations are constantly changing, and it was interesting to see a transition from a fairly seasoned agent to a new agent, but he's doing incredibly well, and being a partner with him is really, it's really rewarding.
Great.
Good.
I served on the planning board for 5 years, or a number of years ago. The first 2 years, I was clueless. I just learned
Yeah.
so much.
Yeah.
So good for you.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, ma'am. Councillor Fowler.
Thank you. I agree with everything that my colleagues have said, but I had a procedural question for you. You may remember, and I was the one that filed the ordinance, that we provide a stipend to people for being on boards and commissions. And I did not include the Conservation Commission. That was my fault, and you and I spoke, and ultimately I put in an amendment, and we passed a new ordinance so that members of the commission are included. There's only 2 boards, and by the way, that was done because people have to take time out of their schedule, come down to City Hall, go to meetings, get dressed on cold February nights. But for some reason, the Conservation Commission and the Planning Board just sit at home and they don't come down here for their meetings. And unless someone has cable, unless they have the ability to watch a meeting, they probably wouldn't know any of you, they wouldn't know what was going on, they couldn't interact with you. And I wondered if, as the chair, if you could tell me the reasoning behind that. It just would seem to me that if everyone else makes the effort to come down, then maybe all of the boards and commissions should.
All I know is that we were told, and I actually say that at the beginning of each meeting, that there was an extension of the COVID requirements that was made by the governor for Conservation Commission meetings.
There is an exemption, but it
Well, an
would
extension.
it would
An
apply
extension
to
of those
everyone else,
COVID
too.
Of those COVID requirements.
Yeah, but I mean, that would apply to zoning, that would apply to,
I don't know if it's only conservation. I'm not sure. I know that Eastern Conservation still meets remotely as well. And there was a recent Massachusetts Association of Conservation Commission statewide meeting, and most of those conservation commissioners meet remotely as well. So I don't know if it's unique.
is
To
there any
Concom?
objection that you know of, to having the Conservation Commission, and then hopefully the Planning Board would follow suit of meeting in person, the way all of the other boards and commissions do?
I don't know. The only thing that would definitely probably restrict my ability to serve, only because I have children in 3 different states. So I usually travel with my laptop, and it allows me to just use one of their, home offices and still take part and be able to be the chair of the commission, actually.
I guess I was just looking at it as a fairness issue, that we're compensating other people and they're coming down here.
Yeah, I'm not sure. You could check with Mr. May maybe, or with Kyle, I'm not sure. I know that there's a statement that's made, though, at the very beginning
Yes.
of each meeting.
Yes.
That,
All right, well, thank you. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you,
Sure.
Mr. Chair.
Yeah, Counselor, I just actually spoke with our clerk, and he's going to look into this because I think the laws have somehow been changed a little bit because there's another, I think the license is also meeting remotely.
Right.
Because I had to do that a couple times, so I think it's something more generally that we have to look into as we're all meeting here, so.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right,
I think
thank you.
that's the right thing to do.
Yeah. Counselor Duraniquan.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for, obviously your willingness to serve, and I think anybody who takes the time to actually be part of anything in the city, deserve, a great act of acknowledgement. But you said something that is very interesting, given the fact that you said you have children, in multiple states, and by virtue of that, you are not able to meet in person. Is that right?
Well, it would be more difficult for me. I usually schedule vacations and things like that, anything like that around Concom meetings to make sure that I'm, available, but not always in Brockton.
So, how often do you guys meet?
We only meet monthly. We meet once a month.
Once a month.
Yeah.
Okay, so.
For example, my daughter is due for her first child in Chicago 2 days after the next Concom meeting. But we're going to be there for the week before, so I will have my computer there.
Yeah, so in regard to what, my colleagues stated, I'm assuming that the IT department, if we want people to see what you do, if we want people to know what your committee is doing, I'm assuming there should be a possibility whereby, even if you are meeting remotely, the IT department might be able to give you guys a link,
I believe every meeting is recorded and they're posted on the Concom website.
Okay, so if somebody does want to see that, they should be able to see it, even if.
Yeah, it's posted usually the week after.
Yeah, personally, I don't really see any issue with that. Given the fact that, we are in the age of technology, I don't think you have to be in this building, for something like this. So
I'm more than happy to do it.
yeah,
but
so as somebody who has been assigned to the IT department, I will talk to, some of the folks on that committee to see, if we can find a way to make it much easier on you and your colleagues. If somebody does want to see the meeting, so at least we can actually send them a link, and why not? You can definitely enjoy spending time with your kids and doing your traveling. I don't really see any issues that. And of course, I just want to thank you again for having the courage to come forward and serving in that capacity. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you,
Mr.
Counselor.
Chairman.
Anyone else? I would like to
Motion to
entertain
approve.
Second.
a motion has been properly made and second. All those in favor of recommending it favorably? All those opposed? Again, ma'am, thank you for all that you do.
Thank you.
For the
Thank
city.
you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Number 4, please.
Item 4, ordered that the following petition be approved and submitted to the Greaton General Court for approval under Clause 1 of Section 8 of Article 2, as amended, of the amendments to the Constitution of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and to the end that legislation be adopted precisely as follows, except for clerical or editorial changes of form only. An act relative to the election of the mayor, city council, and school committee in the city of Brockton. Be it enacted by the Senate and House of Representatives in General Court assembled, and by the authority of the same as follows. Section 1, every mayor, city councilor, and school committee member who is elected to represent an individual ward, or at large, as the case may be, shall have been an inhabitant of a place within the ward, or for the positions of mayor or councilor at large, shall have been an inhabitant of a place within the city of Brockton, for which he is chosen for election for at least 1 year immediately preceding his election, and shall cease to represent such ward or city for the positions of mayor or councilor at large when he shall cease to be an inhabitant thereof. Excuse me. Section 2, this act shall take effect upon its passage. Invited Cynthia Hogan, Elections Commission Executive Director, City Solicitor Megan Bridges or her designee, Attorney Shannon Resnick, Legislative Counsel. Mr. Chairman, I did receive a call from Ms. Hogan from the Elections Commission. She was ill this evening.
And I was contacted by our solicitor that would basically the same. She has a prior engagement that required her attention. And as colleagues, as you remember, I was actually the one that filed this order, and there were some questions that we had associated with this, and it was referred back to this Finance Committee, and our great Legislative Counsel is here to answer those questions. And I hope that we move this forward so that we have something in the books that actually directs us on how to do this. Attorney?
Thank you. Just as a recap, Councilor Rodriguez had reached out to me about the process to put something in the books for the situation in which, say, someone decides to run for election and they had only lived at the city one day before deciding to run. And so through that research, I found comparisons in a bunch of communities, and the one before you is one that is adopted by the city of Boston. Some communities do it by ordinances, some do it by home rule petition. The reason why the city of Brockton needs to do it by home rule petition is because you actually have language in your charter that speaks to qualifications. And the qualifications that you presently have on your charter just says that you need to be a resident. There's no requirement that you be a resident for anything longer than one day. So because you have language in your charter, in order to expand the qualification language, it needs to be by home rule petition. So that was one of the questions that the council had at the last FinCom agenda. There's also language about vacancy, and the reason why that's in there is because neither your ordinances or your charter speak about what happens if someone ceases to live in the city during the position of their their term. And so this is what other cities and community have, and it's just language that says if you don't live here anymore, you no longer serve in your term. It's not language that you necessarily need to keep. You can strike that language out. But you don't have anything in the books, and so this is just one way to make it clear that you want the people representing the city to be residents of the city.
Council Thompson, you're the one that asked for it to be shipped over to this committee meeting, so.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And good evening, Attorney Resnick. So just for the information, I did have the opportunity to speak with Attorney Resnick about this, and she filled me in on, number one, the requirement as to why this is a home rule petition, and how the language regarding the one-year residency requirement and the vacancy requirement, how that will work. And so my questions are answered to my satisfaction, and I'm prepared to vote favorably for this matter. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilor. Anyone else? I would like to entertain a motion that we recommend this.
I'll make a motion to recommend favorably.
Second?
A motion has been properly made and properly seconded to recommend it favorably. All those in favor? Anyone opposed? You better not be opposed. It carries. Thank you, ma'am.
Item number 5, order that the City Council authorizes the acceptance and expenditure of the earmark in the amount of $100,000 from Massachusetts Department of Public Health to the City of Brockton. The earmark funds will be used to fund substance use and harm reduction services. There is no match required. Invited Mayor Robert Sullivan and Troy Clarkson, Chief Financial Officer.
Mr. Clarkson?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the council. As I noted in my prelude sent to you over the weekend, and as it states on your agenda, this is an earmark to assist the city with the work that it does related to the disease of addiction. So there is no match, and it will be used to fund substance use and harm reduction services here in the city.
Councilor Nicastro.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Clarkson.
Evening.
I hope your holiday was lovely.
Thank you. I hope the same for you.
So I read the materials, and this is an earmark for the Champion Plan via the Gandara Center in Springfield. And can you tell me what the Gandara Center is? What's that all about?
The Gandara Center is a nonprofit corporation that provides services throughout the Commonwealth, has a mission for substance use prevention and treatment. So in the last few years, they have taken over and fulfilled the mission of the Champion Plan. So they've been the contracted provider of support services for the Champion Plan.
So do they operate in Brockton, where the Champion Plan was?
Yes.
Okay, okay. But they're headquartered in Springfield?
I did not know that, but yeah, I'm certain that that's the truth.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. President.
Anyone else?
Chair.
Motion?
Motion to recommend favorably?
Second.
Motion has been properly made and properly seconded. All those in favor? All those opposed? Sir, we can't accept comments to council committee meetings unless you've been invited to.
Personal information with the public about how wonderful the program is, and that's why
Yes.
certain things.
Yeah, that's, if you have some questions directly for us, you can ask us directly, but
Great.
we can't do it on this particular forum.
Item number 6, ordered that the City Council authorizes the acceptance and expenditure of the total grant funds in the amount of $31,000 from the Executive Office of Public Safety and Security, fiscal year 2024 Commonwealth Critical Incident Stress Management Program to the Police Department, $31,000. Invited, Eugenia Lopes, Grant Coordinator, BPD, Brenda Perez, Chief of Police or Designee, Troy Clarkson, Chief Financial Officer.
Welcome, Ms. Lopes. I was contacted by the Chief of Police, and she stated that we are in good hands with you explaining this to us, so.
Thank you. I
right
appreciate
ahead.
that, President Rodriguez. Good evening. Good evening, council members. So the Critical Incident Stress Management Grant funds would be utilized to support our peer support team. Through these funds, we would be utilizing them for continued training for the peer support team through the Vermont Wellness Center. This year, we would like to include, but is not limited to, the EMDR therapy, which is the eye movement desensitization and reprocessing therapy. This is a mental health therapy that deals with traumatic thoughts and experiences. Through this grant, we would also be able to work with a clinician to further support our peer support team and allow for recommendations through that clinician.
Great.
Any questions?
Motion to recommend favorably?
Second?
Motion has been properly made in second. All those in favor? All those opposed? It carries. I guess you're staying there because
Thank
the
you.
next one is yours as well.
Yes, I am. Thank you.
Mr. Clerk.
Item number 7, ordered that the City Council authorizes the acceptance and expenditure of a donation in the amount of $25 from Tonia DeAndrade to the Brockton Police Department. Excuse me. Invited, Brenda Perez, Chief of Police or Designee, Troy Clarkson, Chief Financial Officer.
Motion to recommend favorably?
You're not even ready? Motion in second?
Second.
A motion has been properly made in second on the motion.
Yeah, just on the motion. I mean,
Oh, it's a cute story, $25. I wanted to hear where
Well,
it
it
came
just-
from, but you know.
I mean, if Miss DeAndre, made this donation, I'd like to hear from Miss Lopes, just to, to recognize Miss DeAndre and her consideration of this donation and maybe what it will be used for.
Absolutely. So the department would like to thank Mrs. DeAndre for her donation. She regularly donates to the police department, so we're very thankful for that. So these funds will be used to support our Brockton Youth Academy program. That program is also supported through Shannon, but through the Shannon funds, we're not able to make purchases for food, so that donation will go towards that.
Great. Thank you, Ms. Lopes.
Thank you.
Good use. Motion has been properly made in second. All those in favor? Anyone opposed? It carries, and thank you. Please thank her
Thank
for
you.
us.
Will do. Thank you so much.
Number 8, sir.
Number 8, resolve, whereas on March 8th, 2024, Brockton Public Schools, BPS, released to the public the findings of a third-party audit of the district dated February 2024, which was commissioned by the Massachusetts Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, DESE, and whereas said findings disclosed in part deficiencies in the BPS fiscal year 23 budget, and that the district spent in excess of its fiscal year 23 budgeted amount. And whereas said findings also disclosed in part expected deficiencies in the BPS fiscal year 24 budget and projected deficiencies in the BPS fiscal year 25 budget. Now, therefore, be it resolved to invite Acting Superintendent Dr. James Cobbs to appear before the Finance Committee of the Brockton City Council to discuss his concerns and planned actions to address said deficiencies. In light of his March 8th, 2024 comments, what this report makes clear is that while there are numerous significant and growing costs associated with providing students with a holistic education, we have not done a good enough job to plan for and mitigate those costs, nor have we taken enough care to adhere to budgeting best practices. Acting Superintendent Cobbs said we owe it to the Brockton community to do better, and we are steadfast in our commitment to work with our city and state partners to ensure that our budget and spending processes are rebuilt from the ground up in a way that's sustainable and, most importantly, keeps us moving forward toward our goal of providing Brockton students with the best possible education. Invited, Dr. James Cobbs, Acting Superintendent.
Well, unless my eyes are getting even worse and worse, I don't see Mr. Cobb in the audience. But I get, Councilor Nakash, this was your filing, right?
It is, and I exchanged messages with Dr. Cobb off and on all morning, and it was my understanding that he would attend.
We never know, something might have.
I'd recommend a brief recess, and I might go look and see if he's in the building somewhere.
All right, well, I'll entertain a quick recess, and we'll come back. Should we Dr. Cobbs, the clerk actually went through the agenda item, and you're next, and thank you for your agility there, it was pretty good.
Getting there.
You're not having as much problems moving around as you used to. Dr. Cobbs, you're on.
Where was it?
Evening. How can I help you?
Well, do you see the questions on the agenda item here? So Councilor DeCastro
Good
invited
evening.
you to come
I
before
sponsored
us.
this. Hi, Dr. Cobbs.
Good evening.
I'm interested to know, well, I'm riffing off the Open Architects report dated February 2024. And so my first area of interest is, I'm interested to know the areas of spending that resulted in the deficiencies that are reported in the report.
So what particular question would you like me to answer?
Talk to me about FY22.
Okay, I can't give you information about FY22. I was not involved in that budget process, so I can't answer any questions about it.
You weren't?
Sorry?
I said you weren't?
Nope.
Okay, FY23.
Same thing. I can answer questions about starting September 1st, for whatever the budget questions you might have. So.
Okay. Well, FY23, the budget was negotiated and approved in February of 22.
Mm-hmm.
And so you were a superintendent then?
I was the deputy superintendent.
Yes. For operations, facilities, and security. But you weren't involved in the budget process?
Correct.
Okay, how about that? All right. You did mention that, and that surprises me. And what about FY24, the current fiscal year?
So, yeah, again, since September 1st, I can answer questions regarding where we are with 24 and what the projections are and what it looks like, if you have a particular question about it.
Please, start there.
Well, what's your question?
Precisely that. Where are we at in FY24?
So we're still working with the Open Architects. We're working with the Department of Education on the budget process. Again, in the report, there was a $25 million projected deficit. $5 million, it's probably more fluid, $5 million also for non-net spending. So the $25 million is net spending. At this point in time, we feel like we've covered it pretty much, and we'll close the budget year without a deficit. So.
That's a big swing. How will you accomplish that?
Several ways. We put in place some cost saving measures that amount to about $10 million. I have several accounts that I've not frozen, but reduced the spending available in those accounts to about $10 million. Then we applied other monies like our IDA grants, circuit breaker spending. So some of those things have filled in the gap to make a difference. So with those cost cuts in place, we're probably going to close okay on budget.
So your cost cuts will come up to, with grants and such, will come up to 20 million?
25.
25 million. That is a very big swing.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let me continue on. How is the school system, well, no, I'm sorry. Are department heads tracking their spending within their annual budgeted amounts?
Yes, like I said, we're closely monitoring the expenses, and we put cost-saving measures in place. So we obviously every month, every expenditure we take a look at, and I approve or not approve or reduce or defer.
And is Munis now being used?
It's always been used, but it's being used probably more and differently than it was used before.
Good. And are the schools addressing the transportation cost overruns?
So those are, there's a lot of reasons for transportation cost overruns, as everybody knows, mainly which is the out-of-district cost and in-district door-to-door costs. So we're working to, some of the things that I've done is to reduce some of the transportation department staff, particularly the high-salaried employees. We put in place the cost-saving measures as far as overtime, so we pretty much reduced the overtime in the transportation department. Should be just about done because we finally hired an extra dispatcher, so that's over with. And we're currently shopping our private vendors to make, to be more competitive pricing.
When you were here several weeks ago, when we were considering funding the feasibility study, you mentioned that you thought it would be a mistake to disband the in-house buses. Can you elaborate on that?
I think we can better service our own needs, and our buses are newer, and our fleet is newer. Our drivers are well-trained and know the routes. We have to continue to finish, purchasing the fleet. And what we need to do, again, is, like I said, with the private vendors, really take a look at that and get more efficient with those expenditures and cost cutting. But finishing the fleet will help us do that. So,
how many buses do we have now, big and small?
143 altogether.
143? And when you say finish the fleet, how many more do we need?
10 more.
10 more.
It'll actually be a total of 16 new, but some of them we're going to trade in for the older models for the newer, so it'll go up to 153 altogether.
Okay. And who decides that? Like, why do we think we need 10 more?
So we can stop paying a lot of money for private transportation.
Because we're filling in the gaps with private.
We can bring more of that in-house. Initially, that really wasn't discussed in starting the transportation department as fully as it should have been. So we're taking a look at that, and that's what the analysis looks like. If we do that, we'll be able to take more of that in-house with quite a savings.
Financially, about what will we save?
It's difficult because it's kind of fluid, but at least $3 million.
$3 million savings. Wow, that's great. Let's see. Has a proper budget been created for special ed services? The Open Architects study commented that there wasn't one.
Mm-hmm. Oh, special education services, that's a difficult question. You have to be careful. Again, it's a moving target. We'll never know who's going to have for special education services. We have more students all the time. Since the beginning of the school year, we've taken in 1,506 new students, about 200 new students a month. And some of those students come with, a lot of them are immigrant students. They come in service needs for transportation door to door. They'll have to be assessed for special needs. So it's difficult to say, we'll try to put a number on what that looks like, but the out-of-district costs for tuition and transportation are the biggest part of the special education budget.
You mean transporting the children outside of district?
That's correct.
Sure. Okay. How will the deficits for the costs of out-of-district placement, tuition, and unmet service needs be addressed? Have you come up with something?
Again, the circuit breaker monies, the Student Opportunity Act monies, so there's some of the things that we'll use to apply. Obviously, grants as well, our entitlement grants will be part of that funding. So.
Do you expect that we'll keep more special education students in the district?
That's the plan with some of the district moves that we're planning, that we should be able to bring some more of them in-house, not all of them, and we have to meet the needs.
That's right.
We're trying to bring in, for example, the 45-day assessments that we typically send out of district to do that. We're trying to house those in-house, which could be quite a savings because they, again, require door-to-door transportation. And again, it's a 45-day placement, so at least 45 days we have to transport them door-to-door.
Right. How are the improperly budgeted employee incentives and benefits being addressed?
So you have to understand that I cannot do anything about employee benefits. That's the school committee. And whatever the policy they vote on for employee benefits is what the policy we use, and that's the policy we're under now. I can't take away any benefits to employees, and new employees have to pretty much start with the same benefits that are in place as the others. So there's not much I can do about that. That's the school committee.
Will you make recommendations?
I'm sorry?
Will you make recommendations to the school committee on how you'd like them to act?
No. No, again, that's their purview, not mine. So.
Okay. Let's see. How are the individually contracted 130-plus employees, some of whom are also salaried employees, being addressed?
So most of the one-to-one contracted employees are now employees at will. The only ones that have one-to-one contracts now are the ones that require it because of the Massachusetts Teacher Retirement System contributions.
Okay.
So we've most of them are now employee at will contracts, and I've eliminated 9 of the one-to-one contracts positions.
Will you eliminate more before the end of the school year?
Yes.
Okay. Have the FY24 purchase orders and contracts been encumbered?
Yes, we sent out a notice to all the departments to get in all their vendor, whatever purchase orders they have outstanding, contact the vendors, make sure they send them in, the invoices, so we can get them encumbered for the rest of the
And where
school
is
year.
that at? Have they responded?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so you have a better sense going forward. And are the irregularities regarding expired grants being addressed?
Yes. And Trish is working daily on getting those in order, so they'll be addressed. They'll be finished.
That's the lady who's here temporarily?
Right.
Okay. And Munis is being used. And what is the status of the Fund 199 account?
So hopefully, well, not hopefully, the 199 account will be closed this fiscal year. We will not be using it next fiscal year.
So it'll be closed by 6:30?
Sorry? Yes.
Okay.
By the end of the fiscal year, correct.
Okay. And let's talk about the building on Summer Street, formerly known as the May Institute.
I'm sorry?
The building on Summer Street, formerly known as the May Institute.
Right.
I had understood that we were using ARPA monies from the county to put the Champion Charter School in there. And then what happened? Because that's not who's there.
The decision was decided to move them, to put them in a different school and move a different school into that building.
Okay, so where is the Champion Charter School now?
Right now, it's actually on the 3rd floor. It's called the Edison Day Academy, and it's on the 3rd floor of the green building in Brockton High School.
So it has a new name?
Yes.
Okay. Why was the name changed?
I wasn't involved in that decision.
Okay. And the Promise Academy is on Summer Street?
Correct.
Okay. And why is that?
Again, I wasn't involved in that decision.
Okay. And about how many children are in the Promise Academy?
Right now, the Promise, they have about 50 in each class, so just about 100 students.
100. What grades are they?
Right now, they're 9 and 10.
The capacity of the school is greater than 100, isn't it?
Yes.
Do you expect that more children will be added?
Every year, we'll add a grade until we complete the 9 through 12 grades.
Okay. Oh, and are they using the whole school?
For the most part, yes, they are.
Okay. I had asked you to perhaps discuss acts of violence and concerns with disorderly conduct at the high school.
So, as you know, we have a new principal, Mr. McCaskill, and he's working hard to address any concerns at the high school, and I do believe he's making a difference. I stand by my decision to appoint him as a principal, and since January 2nd, he's been there, only January 2nd, hasn't been very long, but since then he's made a lot of progress making appropriate relationships with students and staff. He's working hard with his staff to assess the needs of the school, the current and future needs of the school, so that this summer, with the input of the staff and the teachers and students, we'll put things in place for September. So I think he's doing a great job.
Are disruptive students now facing consequences for that?
They always have been. You know, it's a misnomer. People, you know, that whatever the people want to say about we suspend students daily in all the schools in the district. So it's like people say they don't suspend it, they don't do anything. That's not true. Students have a right to be in the classroom, and whatever the discipline is according to our policy, our handbook, and the state law, they have a right to come back to the school and be back in the classroom, and that's where they belong. So obviously egregious behaviors we have to treat differently, but the idea is to work with them and work through the problems, give them support to get back in the classroom.
Okay. I wrote to you about Dr. Sue Sekowitz and her suggestions to improve the schools. And I'm wondering, have any of them returning to house structure, scheduling homeroom period at the beginning of the school day, relocating the pathway program, creating a high school task force, and thoughtfully creating new policies? Are any of these changes being considered, or have they been made?
So we're working on those things again. Again, it's a new administration. Some of the things that Dr. Zakowicz put in place, for whatever, it's just be several iterations of administration since her tenure there.
Right.
So some of the things have changed, have gone away, and some will be looked at again. But a lot of times those things require negotiation with unions, so it takes time to re-implement some of those things.
Just give me an example of which one of those requires negotiating with the union.
Changing the homeroom, bringing homeroom back. There is 7 minutes in the morning schedule for that homeroom period, but right now it's not in the contract, so we have to sit down and negotiate with them to bring it back.
Wow, I wouldn't have thought that. But, so the disciplinary issues in the district are being addressed?
Absolutely.
Okay. Last week's Boston Globe reported on public schools' use of expensive police details as crossing guards. Can you talk to me about how that decision was made and justified?
So police are not crossing guards. There's two very different things. Crossing guards are typically our custodians. They have assignments as part of their job, part of their work in their contract. We have currently 103 crossing guard posts each day, so we have 121 crossing guards. Our year-to-date expenses for that is $423,697 to date. School police details are different. Most of the time we cover the details with our own school police officers, but sometimes there are other events, that are on school grounds, depending on particularly if it's off hours, and we use school police and Brockton police details for that.
I understand
that number's year-to-date is $14,866.78.
So $14,000 for school police details?
For details, school police details, right.
Police details, okay. And I understand there are 10 school police and 17 or 18 school facilities.
I'm sorry?
I understand there are 10 school police officers.
Right, to cover the school facilities right now. We're short some officers, yes. We're down by about 6 officers.
Right, right. Will you replace them?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Yesterday's Enterprise newspaper reported on inadequate mental health services for children based on the number of students. What can you tell me about that?
So, I can't, there aren't any additional comments on that at this time. We addressed the school committee last Tuesday and gave them our plan for mental health services for students as part of the Student Opportunity Act that will fund that over the next 3 years with a targeted population. So that's where the money will be spent. That's what we use to address that. Hiring more counselors, psychologists. So it's in the school committee from last week.
So you're expecting to hire more?
Yes, absolutely. Once the Student Opportunity Act is approved, that's where the money will fund that over 3 years. At least 5 more school psychologists over the next 3 years.
I reviewed the list.
Each year for 5 years.
Each year, 5 years.
5 more each year for 3 years.
For a total of 15.
Right.
I reviewed the list of people who were laid off about a year ago, and it did include counselors, which was a shame.
Yeah, that's correct, and obviously you can see the situation that we're in. It was
I'm sure it
a
contributed.
tough layoff decision, and it really hurt the needs of our students.
I'm sure it contributed. So what challenges do you see to the public schools right away, right now?
Well, that's an easy one. Adequate funding. We have to be funded. The budget has been year after year after year funded on making cuts to teaching staff and direct support staff of the classroom. We can't keep doing that. We need to be funded, and every year it's been the same situation. We end up with a deficit and deficit and deficit. So something should tell you by this point that we need adequate funding. That $15, $20 million needs to be in the budget
to start in order to properly fund the school district.
I don't think the council knew about your deficits year after year after year.
Yeah, I understand, but that's what we need. If you know, local, we need increased funding from the state, Chapter 70, and we need increased local funding.
Okay. And what about in the next 12 months?
That's what we need. We need to properly fund the district so we can hire the appropriate teaching and support staff for the students' needs.
And I'm sure the next 24 months as well.
That's right.
Just keep layering on that money.
That's right. We need more money.
I
We
understand.
need to do the job. We have 15,000 today, 15,506 students. The projection for fiscal year 25 is 16,644 students.
Okay.
Again, we're adding right now from immigrant students about 200 students a month.
How many homeless students do we now have?
Out of that group, about 760 of them are homeless students.
760 right now?
Right. Of the ones we just admitted as new immigrants.
At the budget hearing last year, the number that I wrote down was 1,100.
There are 1,100 right now students in the district that are McKinney-Vento students. We have on our rolls actually from the report to DESE is about just 975. But there are more. That's a total of over 1,100 students that are McKinney-Vento students.
How recent is that 975 number?
I'm sorry? As of today.
Today. Okay. And I'm wondering, when did you know about the crossing guard situation with the police details?
I'm not sure it's a situation. I mean, that's a news cycle report that it was sensationalized thing, but we've always used school police, and we use them for all different events, from graduations to sporting events, to, you name it. Anything pretty much is on school grounds, again, after hours. If we don't have our own regular school police to do the details, we have to go out to do the details.
That's all I have right now.
You're welcome. That's just part of doing business. Every year, we have to have details and school police.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilor Castro. Councilor Lally, you next.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dr. Cobbs, how are you?
How are you tonight?
Doing all right. A little worried that we might have gotten out early there for a minute.
Yeah, I don't like sitting and waiting.
Fair enough. So, I'll keep going from that then. The city has in place on its side a hiring freeze. Do the schools have a hiring freeze?
No, not really. What happened, what we decided to do this late in the school year, to try to fill regular full-time teaching positions or again, support staff, we're not going to get them. So, and we already have people in place, like long-term subs in their place. So we decided to wait until, next cycle, which will be for this September, to fill those positions with regular teachers, qualified, certified teachers.
So there's no hiring freeze because it's too late to hire people?
But again, I never said we had a hiring freeze. That's your words, not mine.
Right. No. I'm.
So we are not hiring for. Again, we put in place hiring protocols, and we are hiring essential positions that need to be filled, critical positions, if we can find personnel. So we didn't just freeze everything. We are still hiring people.
Right.
We have to do business.
Like the city has a hiring freeze, but if there's an urgent position, they can go get a sign off.
Same on the school side, absolutely.
So you have effectively a hiring freeze de facto, but there is some kind of procedure that you can utilize to fill an urgently needed position.
That's correct.
Okay. What is that procedure?
As Mr. Clarkson can tell you, we have a personnel change request form that we initiate. Whoever department needs that person initiates a form. It goes to Deputy Superintendent Sharon Wolder, and she'll usually talk with whoever the department requested it, because a lot of times she has most of the departments under teaching and learning. Then if it's her and I have a discussion about it, and then it'll go forward. If we approve it, it'll go to Mr. Clarkson's office for accounting and the object and org codes and the funding for the remainder of the school year. And then it comes back to me to eventually approve and sign.
Oh, fair enough. And so recently the department hired a second marketing person for teacher money.
Communications person.
Communications.
Right.
So how many communications personnel do you have now?
2.
You guys had 1 before, though.
No, we had 2. Jess Hodges left, and we hadn't replaced her yet.
Okay, so Jess Hodges left and was replaced on a 1-for-1 basis.
Right.
Okay, is that an entirely necessary position in this
Absolutely,
budget situation?
100%.
What is the communications personnel, what do they provide?
A lot. And daily we get inquiries from all the news media, from journalists, from reporters. They want this information. They have a lot of questions, and that's the person that has the expertise to handle that. So.
And so that was too much for one person?
Yes, absolutely.
Right. Well, there is
very much so.
There's a lot of buzz around.
Well, people have their opinions, and we welcome your opinions, but I'm the one that has to do the business. So.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so that went through the procedure that was signed off.
That's correct.
Okay. While I've got you, and we touched on buses, Councilman Castro touched on buses, and about the necessity of those additional buses. What has been done has anything been done to streamline the efficiency of the bus routes that we have? A lot of things that I have seen, I have heard from my colleagues and from, folks at home, is that they'll see buses with just a couple of kids on them. And, sometimes those buses are going to be seen halfway through a route, and that's a perception thing.
Exactly.
But I've seen buses leave the high school with, a very small number of kids on them. So I just, what has anything been done to reevaluate the routes and streamline them if possible? Because those are some big buses. We could probably get, more bang for our buck when it comes to transport.
Not everybody's an expert on bus routes and bus efficiency, but people see buses leaving the high school. It might be that just that day some of the kids didn't want to get on the bus and they walked home with their friends or went somewhere else. So you can see a bus anywhere and say, well, gee, we're wasting money and that's not efficient. But it's not necessarily true. But to answer your question, yes, we do need to look at that. We do need to take a better look. And I'm working with an organization, MAPIT, the Massachusetts Association of Pupil Transportation, to do an audit. They'll be working with us pretty soon to look at that top to bottom. I got a request from an estimate from another company that's in Colorado, which was ridiculous money, but we'll get it done before the school year begins in September, and we're already working on efficiency in the route, so absolutely.
Oh, perfect. And I'm sure BAT would probably be a resource as well.
Yeah, we do use BAT. When I was a principal at Edison Academy, a lot of our students take 2 buses. They go to the bus terminal and they get to the high school. But we give them like the temporary bus passes to use to get to school and get home. So we do use that as well.
Well, I don't mean to outsource. I mean as guidance for routes. Maximizing the efficiency. Because I think part of the
again, when we get the audit completed, we'll look at the recommendations and we'll work from there.
Right. And I think part of the problem was, I'm no bus expert, but I think part of the problem is the district assumed themselves experts a little early.
Well, again, that's one opinion. Everybody has an opinion about it, but we'll let the experts do the audit.
Right. While the finances are up, I've been, beating the drum on this, and I'm trying to be consistent about it. We have not seen, the council has not seen any requests for any of the outstanding leases the department has that we have not approved. So those leases are still in what would be generously considered limbo. Are we going to see them? Are those leases going away? I'm not necessarily saying purge the leases, but I believe they have to come in front of us.
Most of them are going away, but Solicitor Megan Bridges has the leases. You could certainly request them for her. She's already taken them and reviewed all of them. There will be a couple that will still be in place. 2 that we can't avoid is the parking for the buses in the office space for the transportation department, and the other one currently is the warehouse for the facilities department. The others will go away.
Yeah. So we can expect the facilities and the other leases that are indispensable to come in front of us.
That lease is still in place. Again, you can get a copy of that from the solicitor's office.
All right, perfect.
It actually has an extension on it through 2025. So.
Right.
It was part of the lease, so.
But it's a part of a lease that we didn't approve.
Well, that may be the case. Nevertheless, it's signed by the mayor and it's signed by the former superintendent. So
yeah.
It's in place. So. And that, by the way, is probably the least expensive lease that we have. The cost per square foot is 40 cents per square foot.
Well, law's the law, and it's
again,
a discipline
talk to the solicitor's office and you can get a copy of it and you can go from there. Whatever
we'll bring her back in. Mm-hmm. Now, I received a couple of calls, and this, I consider it to be within the scope, but Mr. Chairman, if I'm out or if you don't have the information, let me know and I'll circle back. Oh, you flatter me. The Adult Learning Center, I've gotten some calls about the potential of it being moved. I'm not up to date immediately on the information. But there was a lot of concern expressed from students and employees at the center that they make, pretty thorough use of the building, and there was a lot of concern about having everything upended by being moved.
Well, I understand that you get calls, and so do I. I've gotten a lot of emails and calls, and that's their right. We have the right to make management decisions that are necessary to educate the students that we're legally responsible to educate, which are students from grades pre-K through 12, age 22. Not adults, but we'll plan to accommodate everybody. They might not like the plan, but that's what we need to do. You mentioned a lease at the Westgate building. We have to move those students this year. We have to have a place to put them. The plan is to move the students out of the third floor of the green building of the high school. We need to have a place to put them. Okay. Yeah. So we have to make management decisions that aren't popular, people don't like, but that's the way it goes.
Heavy is the head. Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, the Adult Learning Center.
That's my job. That's why I was appointed superintendent. That's what I'll do.
Heavy is the head.
Thank you.
But it is something that I'm not. My question was a question, not a this or that.
So those moves are being discussed with the school committee, and we'll make the final decisions, and those will that's what will happen.
Yeah, but we're lucky with the system, with the learning center that we have. And no, we're not. It's not a legal requirement, but the asset
but
that can be.
It's fully planned to accommodate everybody. No, nothing's going to go away. It'll just maybe change shape, but it's not going to go away.
As long as it can maintain its integrity,
Absolutely.
That's the name of the game. I would say that's really all I've got for now. Thank you, Dr. Cobbs. I would just add, my final thought is, I would really encourage the department to
school department.
Yes.
Okay. Which is part of the city department.
Yeah, it's the part that's got the deficit, Dr. Cobbs.
Mm-hmm.
I would encourage it to do what it can in the short term for the buses and to see about a more formal hiring freeze, because it is, such a large department. We don't want to see anything, we want as tight a ship as possible if we're going to weather the storm. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you for your advice, Councilor.
Thank you, Councilor. So that everybody knows, we have Duranicourt, Thompson, Farwell, Griffin, and Minichel. Councilor Duranicourt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Dr. Cobbs, for taking the time to come here. Let me just go straight to the point. Do you believe the school department is in a state of crisis?
Do I believe the school department is in a crisis?
Yeah.
No, I don't. I do believe the school department has issues to work through and budget concerns, and like any school department, there's issues with student discipline, and is it a crisis? No, I would not term it as a crisis. Absolutely not.
Yeah, so given the fact that, let me just say this to you, though. It's like, even though, I was on this council from 2018 to 2020, and from, the beginning of 2024 to present, some people still believe that this council has a lot to do with the deficit. And on a daily basis, which is unfortunate, in terms of calls and emails and people that I know and people that I meet on the street. Some of these people assume that, well, rightfully so, our taxpayer believe that we have everything to do with the deficit. And it's truly unfortunate because we don't. That's the best way to put it. Obviously, we have the city side, we have the school side. I think, in terms of the city, I can assume that we are doing somewhat okay, but in terms of the school, unfortunately, we are not. And to justify my point, it wasn't too long ago in December where, the CFO and the mayor came in front of this council asking money to bail the school out. And to go back to the question that I asked you, I remember vividly I was on the phone with Council Lally, prior to that vote, saying that, this was going to look bad on the council. So I believe that the school is in a state of crisis. And I believe there's I'm not going to point finger at you, but I believe there was a lack of, if not, there's a lack of organization in terms of like our budget based on how people approach it, especially that can be seen with the transportation department, given the fact that, I am not an expert on transportation, but I would assume, we have so many problems within that department. Especially with, how we are spending money.
Oh, I'm sorry, Councilor. Did you have another question for me?
Mr. Cobb, let me just put it to you like this, right? So, and I've been observing you, a lot tonight in terms of your approach and based on, how you choose to answer certain questions. But I'll tell you this, as somebody who has been elected by the people to sit here, it is my responsibility to ask you, as the acting superintendent, the question that I think that I should ask you.
And like I said, I do not believe this school department is in crisis.
No, I understand.
I believe the budget is a crisis, and we could go back and forth and debate who's responsible for that or who isn't or what happened, but nevertheless, this is where we are.
Yeah, I'll let you finish.
We're trying to work through it to make sure that we can educate the students that we're legally responsible to educate and take care of the staff that we have.
Excellent point, Dr. Cobb. Let me just put it to you like this. Like I just stated, we up here, right? Each of us has been elected by the people to serve. And at the end of the day, we do have a solemn obligation, not just to sit here, as I always say, but also to take responsibility for what has been going on. I personally is not happy with what has been going on. You just asked me if I have a question. I do, not just a question, I have multiple questions. To go to that point today.
Happy to answer your question, Councilor.
Dr. Cobb, let me just continue. Today, right, I wrote a letter to the CFO, and I will give him some time to get back to me on that, questioning him in regard to his role as somebody who was appointed last year to take over that role. And I think it's very unfortunate, given the fact that we are in a deficit, and I don't feel like, personally, Dr. Cobb, I don't feel like, you show any, how do I put this? I personally do not feel like you show any kind of interest in terms of thinking about what we are going through. Based on some of your comments and based on how you have been answering some questions.
Respond to
they
that?
asked you, let me just put it, they asked you a question earlier about, crossing guards and police officers. Your response was, we always hire police officers for different
Not as crossing guards, though.
which is true. But based on the Boston Globe, obviously they have evidence to justify that point. I personally talked to the reporter who wrote the article. The city of Quincy, from 2020 to present, based on what you read, has spent only $18,500. And the money that they spent, which is rightfully so, did not come from the school budget. And I think this is something that we can learn from as a city. Do I believe that we should pay people for what they do? Of course. But do I believe that we should take money from the school budget to pay for details? Absolutely not. And at the end of the day, these are the things that we have to look at in order for us to somewhat, I don't want to say resolve, but minimize the impact that we have been facing on. And to sit here...
I don't disagree with you there, Counselor. I don't think we should pay for police details either. It should come from the city budget, but nevertheless, that's what you see.
But Dr. Cobb, as I'm talking to you and making my point, right? Because I think it's important for, the viewers, not only to hear, but also to understand the situation that we are dealing with. You, not just me, but like I said, I observe multiple people. You ask them, do you have a question? So I don't think, the school situation can just answer by virtue of each of us ask you one question. I think that, we have, the opportunity to express how we feel about what has been going on. And to pay a police officer $575 for 15 minutes for 4 hours, I mean, this is not, to you, it's unacceptable.
I don't disagree with you.
And it's important for people who are, watching at home to know that I personally is against that. And obviously you will get people out there saying that, well, you are against police officers. I don't care what they think. Like you said, they are public opinion. You stated that multiple times tonight. So I think it's important for us to look into this thing. And I said it perfectly well. I don't think you do have the ability not to hire them, but you do not have the ability to hire them and not paying them. That's one thing.
That's
so the
correct.
question...
I don't get to choose who goes on a detail, absolutely.
Well, I mean, I understand, but the question is, is there a necessity for you? Let me just ask you this. How many of them have you been hired since January in terms of police detail?
I don't have that number, but I can get it for you.
Yeah, can you get back to me on that? That would be one question. So number two, are you planning on hiring them for crossing kids on the street?
Hiring who?
Police detail?
Yes, we have to. It's required, absolutely. For school events, for evening events, we have them.
No, we're not talking about this. I am talking about, after school, kids are ready to go home, and you need somebody to be there for less than 15 minutes.
That's usually our own school police officers to do that. Our police are on detail until 11:30, so they would do that themselves in-house for people we already have hired.
So you are willing to pay them $500?
We don't pay them any extra money. Our own school police, we don't pay them any extra money.
No, I'm not talking about the school police. I'm talking about the Brockton Police Department, which has been hired. I
don't have any choice in that, Counselor. That's, if we need a detail by law, we have to have certain details at certain times, and we ask the police department to send the detail, and they choose who goes. I don't have any choice in that.
No, we're not talking about who comes and who doesn't. That's what I'm talking about. What I'm asking
you asked me if I'm willing to pay for that detail, whatever the cost is, and the answer is yes. I don't have any determination on what the cost is, though. That's not my decision.
Given the fact that we are facing this deficit, let me tell you this. I know,
we have to have the details, Counselor. That's just,
so what about the crossing guards? Can you hire more of these people? Can you hire?
We've had ads out for crossing guards, but those are our custodians typically to do that. And there are some that are not custodians that are crossing guards.
Okay, so instead of how much do you pay them? I'm assuming that's based. Is this based on the contract?
Yes.
Okay, so technically you don't pay them extra money.
It's in the contract.
So you give them a stipend. What is that?
It's about, for each day, it's about a little over $20 because they get each morning and afternoon shift.
Okay, let's just put about $20. This is what you just said, right?
Times 121.
So yeah, let's just put it to you like this. Yeah, I understand. So if we're gonna do the math, I'm very good at math. I'll tell you this, very good at math. If we're gonna do the math, right? Instead of hiring a police officer, whereby you have to pay them, and like you said, you have. How do I put this? You have no say, understand, you have no say in terms of who's coming.
That's correct.
$575 $75.
It's not always that. It may be some, an officer.
But by law, they have to come. By law, this is by law.
It could be somebody for $500. It could be somebody for $130.
Well, I'm gonna stick with that $575.
Yeah, that's fine,
Let me just
but it's not always the same.
I understand. Let me just say this to you, right? By law, the moment they come, well, by contract, let me just put it to you like this, not by law, by contract. If they spend 15 minutes, you have to pay them $575. This is not you. I'm not putting this on you.
But we do have to pay them for the 4 hours. Yes, we do. It may not be $575, but we do have to pay them for the 4 hours.
Yeah, so,
Counselor,
Mr.
hold on
Chairman.
just one second. Counselor, Mr. Acting Superintendent, let's be adults on this. Let him ask his question, and then...
Well, I'm waiting
you
for
let
Ken to
him
answer the question.
his question, so that we don't
That'd
go
be
back
nice.
and forth and sound like we're working at a market or something. So, go ahead, sir.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. President. So my question to you, right, if you give the crossing guards, and then obviously, I mean, you didn't make these rules, you just have to follow these rules. But I know that there are opportunities where you can actually block them, given the fact that you are the acting superintendent. If by virtue of hiring a crossing guard, you give them, let's just say $30, I mean, I would look for these people as opposed to pay that amount. Wouldn't you agree with that?
May I answer the question now?
Of course.
Okay, so crossing guards and police details are two different things. Crossing guards cannot do traffic detail, okay? It's a union issue, and Mr. Farwell can speak to that, Council Farwell can speak to that. Way back in the day when we had craftsmen doing the crossing guards, and it was ridiculous money, so we've changed that. But by both unions, one can't do the other's job. So I cannot hire more crossing guards to do traffic detail and direct traffic. I cannot.
Excellent. So thank you. So, I'm gonna pause this for now, and I'm gonna try to see if I can have a meeting with the mayor, as soon as possible, to see how he can somewhat renegotiate.
Thank you.
This contract. And I think it's kind of like unfair to you for me to actually question you about this. But as the superintendent, I would hope.
Yeah,
you're going to stop.
I understand, and you need information. I appreciate that, and I do understand that you have questions, and I try to answer as best I can. But like I said, there's two different jobs, two distinct unions, and they cannot do each other's job.
So earlier you mentioned that we needed, the 10 buses to complete, I'm assuming, the amount of buses that we need.
Correct.
Given the situation that we are dealing with, I would be the first one to vote against something like that. And Councilor Lally stated that, I mean, I don't want to put it to you like this, but I remember vividly when I was a kid back home in Haiti, I used to walk to school. I'm not demanding that children should do that, but is there a possibility where we can somewhat having some of these kids meeting at a certain point whereby we don't have to buy 10 more buses because of what we are dealing with? Do we have to add, the 10 buses? And if yes, I believe you said it was going to cost about $3 million, something like that?
No, I didn't say that.
So, how much would adding 10 buses cost the taxpayers?
If we bought them outright, it would cost us about $5 million. But my plan, if you let me finish, if you ask me the question, so I'd like to answer the question, please. My plan would be to not purchase the buses, but to lease the buses on a municipal lease contract, which would be a lot less reduced cost of savings and spread it out over 5 years. And as far as, before you make your mind up to vote against something, you should probably understand all the facts, and there will be a presentation with the school committee. But sometimes you have to spend money to save money, Counselor. And by buying those buses, we can take a lot of the services in-house and have a potential savings of more than $3 million. But we have to complete the fleet in order to take the transportation in-house to do that. So you'd have to buy buses and you'd have to hire a few more drivers. But then some of these private transportation costs would go away, some of the in-district costs that we can use. We will still have to more than likely contract out the out-of-district drives because they're like one student in one small van that go to Boston or Taunton or Weymouth or someplace. So,
Excellent.
so the savings to realize, Council. So before you make up your mind to vote against it, you probably should hear the whole proposal because it makes fiscal sense.
Okay, so about a month ago, I mean, I'm not sure about the date, to give credit to the CFO, we got to his recommendation based on the, can you hear me perfectly? If not, I can speak somewhat. I'll go back to it. Trust me, I'll try my best.
I'm sorry for my military life. I had a little bit of hearing loss.
It's okay. Let me try to see if you can hear me now, and I'll go slow.
I appreciate it.
About a month ago, to give credit to the CFO, during his presentation at I believe it was a school committee meeting, he stated that some of our transportation contract, I believe, if I may quote him, was too kind. What do you make out of that?
I don't disagree.
So do you plan on somewhat changing that?
As I stated already to Councilor Castro, absolutely. We have a plan to do that to essentially by the end of the school year, all the one-to-one vendor contracts will go away. We'll renegotiate every contract. We'll probably have a master contract, and we will put the routes out to be bid by whatever vendor wants to use them, and they'll be our rates that they work with. So absolutely, we have a plan for that.
Mr. Chairman, I know the CFO's name is not part of that. Is it okay for me to sort of like ask him a question based on that? Would that be okay? If not, I can wait.
If it satisfies you, go right, you see him, if he doesn't have a problem with it.
Mr. Clarkson, if you don't mind. Thank you, sir.
Does anybody object, by the way? Because I think I'm supposed to ask you that.
I just want to ask him a quick question in regard to that
Speaking on your behalf.
contract.
Go ahead, Mr. Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Clarkson. I know your name was not part of this, but I hope you can help me out. In regard to, we negotiate this contract, as the money man, how much money do you believe that we can save? I mean, you may not have the number now, but you can just give us like a brief amount in terms of like, if we do take the time to take a look at this contract, which you stated perfectly well, they were too kind. Do you believe that there's a possibility for the school department to save, a good amount of money?
I do, Counselor, but I wouldn't want to quantify it. What I said at the school committee meeting several weeks ago was that I believe there were significant savings in taking a look at the way the owned yellow school buses are operated, and also the vans that are used for special ed transportation. But I will say, I believe Dr. Cobb's addressed both this evening and has acknowledged that some changes could be made that could save significant sums, in the millions of dollars perhaps, but I don't know that we've done enough research to be able to pinpoint an exact figure, but it is certainly in the millions of dollars.
Thank you, Mr. Clark. Dr. Cobb, if you don't mind. So, having heard the CFO making that statement, here's what I would like to see from you. I would like you to take the time to look into this contract, and hopefully, we will have the opportunity whereby we can ask you pretty much the same question in terms of how much money that you have been able to help the school department save based on your, approach in regard to renegotiate this contract. With that being said, Mr. Chairman, thank you. I'll leave it there.
If I may, I want to respond to your comment about my attitude or it seemed like my work ethic, and it seems you're calling into question that. And you have no idea how much time and how much energy we're putting into this every day. Most of my days are from 6 o'clock in the morning until 9, 10 o'clock at night. So you really can't comment on what my commitment is and what my focus is as far as pulling the school district, leading it out of this mess, and putting us in a better place for next fiscal year. So I just want to make sure that that's in the records. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, so let me just say this too, and I'll close with it. Dr. Cobbs, I am not questioning the amount of time that you put in terms of like serving this. What I would say is that you, as the acting superintendent, it's a job and it's a responsibility. Let me just say this to you, right? It's a job, it's a responsibility that you assume. So any amount of time that it will take you to satisfy that job, it is your obligation. I don't think taking the time to ask you questions in regard to the taxpayer money has nothing to do with your ability to perform your job. I am not a superintendent. I don't know what it means to be a superintendent, but what I do know is that I got questions, calls, emails all the time. And it takes somebody like you to somewhat educate me in terms of what's going on in the school system, whereby when I receive these emails and conversation, I can respond accordingly. So if you believe some of this question has been personal, I don't know what to tell you. But one thing that I will tell you, as long as I'm here, as long as I'm elected, I will ask anyone, anytime, any question that I think is necessary. And if somebody feels uncomfortable to answer these questions, that would be up to us to determine the outcome of it. Anybody who has a job here has an obligation to answer to the taxpayer. We are the representation of the taxpayer, and that's part of the reason we are here. We are not here to look good. We are not here to sound good. We are not here to make anyone feel good. We are here to ask questions, to find out what's going on. And I have no reason, Dr. Cobbs, to go personally. That's not my style. That's not who I am as a person. But one thing that I know is that I do ask questions. And I know some people may have a problem with it, but I'll tell you this. If the voters don't want me to ask questions, they will vote me out. Until then, that will continue. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Council. I have no problem answering your questions. Like I said,
All right, guys, let's just
I'm doing
not
my
go
job
back
and taking
forth.
care of the business.
Otherwise, we wouldn't get out of here until tomorrow morning. Councilor Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good evening, Dr. Cobb. Thank you for coming before us. So some of my questions are already answered, but I kind of really want to focus on three things that the Open Architects audit kind of brought to our attention. And the first one I'm going to start with is the out-of-district placements. I'm trying to wrap my head around a few things. So I know Councilor Nicastro brought up two of our schools, the alternative schools, the Edison Day, that's currently over at Brockton High on the Green Building, and the Promise School, which is currently over at the former May Institute. When they talk about out-of-district, can you tell us specifically, what do they mean when they say out-of-district? What are they referring to when they say our out-of-district costs?
Well, essentially just what it says. We have students that, by virtue of their special education, individual education plan, require services that we cannot provide here in the district. It may be residential placement, it may be psychiatric placement, it may be hospitalization, or any combination of that. Those students, by law, we have to pay for to educate and to transport. So, but that may be done. We contract with other facilities out of district, like collaboratives or places for the students to go, again, for the 45-day evaluation to determine what their needs are, if we can meet them or not. If we cannot, by law, we have to place them and we have to pay for it.
Okay, so this would be examples, blind students or deaf students or those with severe mental challenges that we don't have teachers or facilities for. We have to send them, transport them, and pay to other facilities outside of Brockton that can provide the type of treatment that they require.
Exactly, and transport them back to their home.
Okay.
And under the McKinney-Vento law, students that are homeless or they can be living in Taunton, and they have the choice whether or not they want to register for school in Taunton or in Brockton. And if they decided to stay in Taunton but go to school in Brockton, we have to transport them.
Okay, so piggybacking on that, is there a time limit for that? Can they, from first grade to 12th grade, live in Taunton but come into Brockton, be educated here in Brockton by their choice?
Usually not. There is a cutoff point, like sometimes the end of the school year or the next school year, depends on what grade they're in. There is a cutoff period that they have to choose one or the other.
Okay. So there is at some point at the end of the school year.
Right. Again, these are for McKinney-Vento students, homeless students, not for out of district for other services. No.
I've heard
a student placed, from grade, from pre-kindergarten through 12 or to age 22, if it's a special needs student that has severe needs that we cannot take care of. So.
Right, so special needs are responsibility throughout their education,
Yeah,
but homelessness there's a cutoff.
There's a sundown on is the point.
I hear McKinney-Vento mentioned often.
Mm-hmm.
Can you explain what that is?
Well, essentially just what I said. It act was I'm not sure the year to quote you the year it was enacted, but it's an act for that particular students that are deemed homeless, and there's different kind of states of homelessness. But, again, most of the students that are coming in now, that's 1,506 students since July 1st that are mostly immigrants, and a lot of them coming from Haiti. Those students, many of them will be deemed homeless until they get taken in either a family or they're placed someplace. So we're responsible to transport them wherever they live, back and forth, or even in district, from the hotel somewhere in the city to the school. That's our responsibility.
So what would give them access to a Brockton school if they're coming from a foreign country, coming into Massachusetts? They live in some other community. What allows them access to Brockton High or any of the Brockton schools?
They may have started here, they come to register to school here, and then once we enroll them, if they get placed by the state someplace for a homeless shelter, for example, then now they're out. It could be anywhere. Like I said, it could be any town, or even Boston, Taunton, Weymouth, you name it. So.
All right, so if they for somehow have some relative, they home base it here, but through their process go somewhere else, then, but again, there's a time limit in which they would have to go to the school in which their community in which they live.
Right.
Okay. So what type of, you mentioned, I think it was 1,500 immigrant students coming into our school system this year. Now, from my understanding, we kind of have a little bit of experience with this particular issue, going back to the 2010 Haiti earthquake, where we had a lot of Haitians come in at that time, and I believe I was told that on the first day of school at Brockton High, 400 students that we were not prepared for showed up for the first day of school. And so, I mean, I can imagine the type of, pressure on our resources that requires. And so we're kind of experiencing a little bit of the same thing this year. Sure. Now, do we get reimbursement from those students? Because I know there's that October 5th deadline.
October 1st, typically, yeah.
Okay, October 1st deadline.
So what happened is we enrolled, I'm sorry, were you finished?
Yeah, no, please.
We enrolled from July 1st to October 1st, a little over 700 students that are immigrant students. And since then, another 700, essentially. Those students that we picked up by the state, by DESE, October 1st, will get paid for next year. As well as the other students that come after that, we get paid for next year. So they come in, we have to enroll them, we have to educate them because they're in our community, and the money for them will catch up. But for this year, we started off based on what we expected to have, and that's our reimbursement.
So in this current fiscal year, we don't get an extra dime for 200 students a month who are showing up in our schools.
That's correct, Counselor.
And so, and the double whammy is, if they move out of district, we'll never see that money, right? Because they'll have...
We'll get it for every time they were enrolled.
Okay. Yeah. So even if they're not back in our school system the next fiscal or the next academic year, we'll still get reimbursed for them for this year.
For the time they were here. Right.
Okay. Understood. So how many alternative schools do we have? The Edison Day was mentioned, Promise School was mentioned. What are the other schools that we have in the city?
That's a great question, Counselor, because we're some of the schools went away because we lost the Keith Building. At the Keith Building, we had 5 different alternative programs. We had what used to be the B.B. Russell, then it went to the Frederick Douglass. We had the Champion School. We had the EI program at the Champion School. We had we had the evening program, which was called Champion City for the 37.5 for each students. So we had those 5 programs and we had the Pathways program, which was for students that had dropped out, or older students. And some of them were actually affiliated with Edison Evening Academy. So those were adult students that came in for tutoring and classes and eventually passed all the classes they need to make up the credits to earn a diploma through Edison Academy. So those 5 schools went away.
So that when you say they went away, you mean we no longer provide?
But a lot of them went away. So because the Champion went to the Edison Day program, which is at the 3rd floor of the high school. The EI program, we kind of don't have some of those students that are out of district now because of their needs. Some of them are here we can accommodate within the district. The 37H program we don't have right now because, again, there's a need for that program. And the Pathways program is more or less kind of reconstituted as a re-engagement center at the fairgrounds right now with releasing that space.
Okay.
And at the same time, we also added another school, which is a Promise School, to the mix. And at the same time, we closed the school, the Huntington building. So that's what we need the square footage, we need the space for students. So with the move that we're proposing, that we propose to the school committee that they'll vote on, we'll reconstitute those programs.
Okay. So when you say that, we ended or consolidated some of those programs.
Right.
But would you also say that by the closing of the Keith School and not having a kind of an appropriate place to put some of those students, that added to our out-of-district costs?
Absolutely.
All right. And you're saying that now that the Huntington, I believe there was some roof work or some other additional work
The roof is done, but we're rehabbing the interior right now.
Okay, and that's expected to come online next academic school year. And then we can start taking some of these programs that may be out of district and put them into the Huntington to save on some costs.
Not necessarily the Huntington School. We have a list of moves that I'm going to discuss with the school committee publicly soon. But yeah, those will be back into the fold. So.
Okay, but the services that they provide to our adult community and the ability for those adults to walk over to the Payne from the BAP bus station, is really critical. And so I know, you have to make tough choices, but I just hope that you can keep that in mind that...
Yeah, I do, Counselor. I understand it, and I've gotten all the emails, too, and calls, and I do understand it. But like I said, we're legally responsible for the students from pre-K to 12, age 22, not adults. But like I said, those programs are not going to go away. We're just going to accommodate them differently than what they've been accustomed to.
And if we could just take into consideration their transportation needs.
Well, Counselor, I just want to point out to you that, again, I was principal at Edison Academy, the evening school, for 8 years. The student age in that academy was 16, 17, in their 20s, 30s, and 40s. And they had to take 2 buses to get there every night, and they took buses to get home, and they managed to do it.
Understood.
Those are adults, they're adult students too, some of them, but they manage to do it every single night and graduate and get their credits and graduate high school.
Well, again, I think they provide a tremendous resource, and I know the decision will be up to you, but it just, one counselor's...
We will accommodate them, and as a matter of fact, they will still use that school in the evening for the evening classes, so that doesn't change.
Okay. Well, I appreciate that. Thank you, Mr. Cobb. Dr. Cobb, I apologize. So out of district, it sounds like we're going to do the best we can to bring in some of those students who are currently out of district, keep them in district to save on some of the transportation costs and maybe some of these tuition costs.
Tuition costs, which are hefty for some of the schools, absolutely are.
No, I think that's wise, and I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Secondly, transportation. And so during this conversation, the issue of transportation was raised multiple times, and you referred to, nobody in this room is a transportation expert, so there may be some misconceptions about what's going on. I want to make sure, are we hiring or is a transportation expert in charge of our bus fleet? One with experience managing a bus fleet. So that, like, we say we're not experts, we're hoping that you're going to hire experts. Is that the plan?
That will be part of the audit process and the recommendations that we will follow once that is done. So.
Okay, because I think maybe, just reading through this open architect report and then speaking with, our own CFO and others, that, that there was really a lot of miscommunication or misunderstanding over at that transportation department on budgeting and route making. And so it doesn't seem like any bus fleet expert was in charge, and I hope that we can change that to get some real experts in there to give us, their expert opinion on how to better run that bus fleet. Thank you for that. Secondly, have we identified any property or additional properties to house our bus fleet and operational and maintenance facility? I know we kind of had some fits and starts on that, but that seems to be a critical need for the city, is to get a piece of land that we can house our buses, has enough parking for the employees, has a dispatch center and a maintenance center. Are we any closer to purchasing a property or identifying a property to purchase?
The short answer to your question, as far as purchasing, no. Identifying, yes. There's a couple of properties that I've identified. Ken Thompson and I looked at a while ago, and it hasn't come to fruition yet, but it's something that needs to be looked at again, absolutely.
Okay. I think I know what you're talking about, but yes, we as a city have to.
That's right now, obviously, but
right. No, I understand.
Have to make some tough decisions about that as well.
There's a lot of tough decisions ahead of all of us, so I think we can just add that one to the list as well. Reading some of these audits, it seems like the city's responsibility on our non-net spending is going to increase significantly. We're talking tens of millions of dollars to meet essentially our requirements, because I think one of the issues that we were finding, and the term is slipping my mind, but not funding programs on which we have an obligation to fund, therefore.
Quiet net school spending.
Yeah. Therefore, we're getting penalized millions of dollars because we haven't.
I think what you're talking about, Council, sorry to interrupt you, is the maintenance of effort.
Maintenance of effort.
Special population, that's absolutely.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, that's killing us. I mean, that's a huge part of the deficit, millions of dollars, because we did not fund these programs as required. And then on top of that, we may be susceptible to losing those programs. So all the funding goes away, or the grants that fund those programs.
We need to decrease the grants, the entitlement grants, absolutely, if we don't meet that maintenance of effort and meet the net school spending requirement, absolutely.
Right, and I think this council and the city has to realize that that's going to require tens of millions of dollars in non-net spending from the city side to meet those obligations.
Net school spending.
Oh, net spending.
Right.
So then we'll go over to non-net, because that's our transportation spending.
Right.
Now, last year, I believe fiscal year 2024, we allocated $11 million. I think you requested, at least on the city side, about $15 million. And then looking at the audit, the expected expenditure for fiscal year 24 is about $22 million. So essentially double what we allocated. Are we expecting to have a request for net spending in
this fiscal year?
This fiscal year for potentially double what we allocated this fiscal year?
Hopefully, Council, not double, but yes, there will be an increase. There will be an additional request for net school spending to close the budget this year, to balance the budget. Yes.
Well, I appreciate that. So moving on, just to special education. I've been told often that we're just not receiving the proper reimbursements from the state for the special education. Can you talk more about that? So let's just say that blind student, that deaf student, that severely, mentally challenged student that we're sending out to Quincy and Braintree and all these other places, where are we on what we're paying versus what we're getting reimbursed for?
So to answer your question, the net school spending requirement for a special needs student generally if you take it the aggregate as a whole, the net school spending should be about $19,000 per pupil. And you're talking about 3,111 students right now in special education. Our net school spending has been around $16,000 per student. So there's a deficit there already of $3,000 monthly per student.
So that's 3,000 times 3,100.
Correct.
Not a math guy, but that seems like a lot of money.
A lot of money.
Yeah. So I know the Student Opportunity Act has stepped increases.
Right.
Is the special education reimbursement one of those stepped increases we should expect more for fiscal year 25?
Yes, some of that money will come through the Student Opportunity Act, some will come through the IDEA grant, which is part of the maintenance of effort. Some of it will come through the circuit breaker funding for those things for out-of-district costs. So there's a combination of funds that can be available for that.
Would we expect that to close that $3,000 gap, or are we just less than 3,000?
You know, those are grants, and realistically speaking, the grants should not be tied into, calculated into the net school spending calculation. Those are above and beyond. So every year we apply for a lot of grants, and we probably supplement the total budget by about $30 million with grants from different areas. So, but those should not be calculated like we did to balance 2024 budget to cure the deficit. We used that money to help cure the deficit for 2024. We shouldn't do that for 2025.
So the way to close that deficit is actually for the city to fund through...
And the state.
And the state through, okay.
Through Chapter 70 funding and local funding.
Do we expect any increase in our Chapter 70 funding?
We should.
Okay.
Yes. And that's in the calculation now. At least right now, the numbers are different. There's still, Troy's gone already. The numbers have changed, but probably right at this, we had a meeting today, and we meet like twice a day with the state and with our finance team. So we can expect some additional funding, maybe around $50 million, but it may change, it may go up, but it's still, as you can see,
okay.
Every year we get $15, $20, $25 million in the hole. So.
Now, is that through a calculation of Chapter 70 that's kind of on the books and it's just going to be what it is? Or is that something that, that us as a city or a state delegation can advocate for additional changes in that calculation to better serve Brockton?
Both. The city and the state delegation can certainly, there's a lot of obviously lobbying going on at the state level for additional Chapter 70 funding across the state, because we're not the only ones in this spot. Many districts are in the 40, 30 more $1 million deficits. But also here at the city level for the local contribution, that needs to increase.
Okay. And then my last question, and this may be just a tiny bit out of the scope, but right now, in the Ordinance Committee, we're talking about additional help on the city side for funding for positions for a school auditor, to help assistant school auditor and an assistant CFO for school-related services. But within the context of that conversation, we're always bringing up consolidation, right? 37M, and which the statute allows for consolidation of certain departments, both on the city and the school side. One of them being our finance departments, I think HR department, our maintenance operations department. So right now on the city side, there's a robust conversation going on regarding consolidation. Now, I know maybe this is really a school committee discussion, but as somebody who's really been in, deep into this issue, the finance issue that we find ourselves in, would you be willing to provide us some feedback as we discuss this issue? Do you believe consolidation of some school and city departments, namely the finance department, would benefit the city and help control some of these costs, since all eyes would be on this issue throughout the year?
Well, I'll be very candid and very honest with
Please.
you, Counselor. No. And to some degree, the reason why is, for the most part, in each department, each structure, the city departments are much smaller than the school departments. So, for example, facilities, we have 200 people, and facilities for the city side has 3 or 4 people to do maintenance and building requirements. Could we use help from the finance department? Yes. Putting them together as one, I'm not sure how the practicality that would work, because we need literally somebody on the other side of the street every day working in the finance department to handle a myriad of issues that come up every day. So I'm not sure if we realize a lot of efficiencies, quite honestly, unless you merge the departments and laid off people, from one department to the other, so that may be where you realize some savings, but other than that, I don't really see any efficiencies or economy of scale that would benefit the school department by doing that.
Okay, well, I appreciate that feedback. I think this is a conversation that the city's going to have for a while. We invite the school department, the school committee to join us in these conversations because right now, again, you may be right? Through these conversations, by listening to the experts, we may learn that those efficiencies may not materialize. We may learn that they do materialize, and it's best, maybe in a limited capacity, some consolidation. But I just invite the school department and the school committee to work with the city council. I would love to be able to sit down with you and some other school officials so we can really just kick this idea around. I think it's one worth discussing.
It makes total sense, Counselor, and I'll give you an example. I just had a conversation today with Dr. Moran. She's the Assistant Superintendent for Human Resources. And already right now, you're down 2 people on the city side in the Human Resources office. And I think just Sandy now. And so we've been doing some of the work with them already because they just can't handle the load. So if we merge, we're going to end up doing the work anyway. So it's really not going to save any money on the school side. It will be doing more of the work for the city.
Right. And it's about, it just seems that for the longest time, there's been a wall between the city and the schools. Even in the way we talk about it, you brought it up yourself, that the school department is part of a department of the city. But just traditionally, over the last 15, 20 years, it seems, that the school department was an island unto itself, and there was a wall, and we just said, you do you, we'll do us. I think that has to change. Right. And whether it be just through more conversations, more discussions, more effort on both parties to merge, or through some official reorganization, I think the wall between the school department and the city needs to come down. And
disagree with the council.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And I want to be part of that effort. And I know
I work personally I meet with all the city department heads and with the mayor every 2 weeks. I work closely with Troy and Chief Perez and Chief Nadelli and Pat Hill, DPW, Pat Hill. So we work closely and coordinate on a lot of things with, again, Jim Plouffe and Deputy Chief Williams. We really do work closely.
Right.
Whether or not, again, merging some of those departments, the discussion needs to be kind of fleshed out.
Right. No, I appreciate that, and I know the school department works tremendously well with our other city departments, and I just, that distance. I think this crisis kind of shines a light on that separation, and the more we can bring both that department within the city and not it be 45 School Street, but just another city department, I think the better off we will all be. So I appreciate any efforts you can help with that situation.
Really willing to help, Councilor.
Great. Thank you for coming in this evening, Dr. Cobb.
Welcome.
We appreciate your time. That's all I have. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilor Thompson. Councilor Fowler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dr. Cobbs, I'll try to be as succinct as I can. So let me start off with your prior position before you became interim superintendent. You were Deputy Superintendent of Operations, is that correct?
That's correct.
What were the functions in the school department under your command?
Technically, in my organizational chart, I had facilities, I had the police, which is security, safety. I had the Parent Information Center. I had the Transportation Department, sort of, and I'll address that in a minute, and the IT Department.
Okay, and at some point, because of your responsibility for the school police, the issues that have arisen at the high school didn't happen overnight. When did you become aware that we had some significant behavioral problems at the high school?
I'm not sure how to answer that question, Counselor, because there's always been significant behavioral problems at the high school. It's not something that just happened in the last year or two since I've been deputy superintendent. It goes back many years and several administrations at the high school.
But you would have aligned your responsibilities to guide the school police based on what was happening at the high school. So tell me what you did when you became aware, since you said they'd been going on. What did we do with the school police to try to address those issues so that we hadn't reached the point where we are now?
So even though technically they were under the operations department, I was not directly supervising the school police. That was a prior superintendent. It was Superintendent Thomas. Mostly, we had meetings with the school police sometimes, but mostly they would meet with the superintendent and whatever they needed, operations they needed to do, whatever it was. It really wasn't necessarily my decision to move or change or do anything with that.
All right, and with respect to transportation, when the city decided to purchase its own fleet of buses, am I correct that actually you quarterbacked that?
Right, myself and Mr. Petronio, absolutely we did. We did a lot of the groundwork, the legwork to purchase the buses, to buy the facilities, or lease the facilities, to establish them, to outfit the buses with all the electronics that we needed, interview and hire staff. Absolutely. At the beginning, when we started that, I was absolutely involved from the ground up building it.
All right, so you did participate in interviewing and hiring transportation staff?
Right.
Okay. And do we provide training for people who schedule bus routes and who are in charge of billing and all of the attendant responsibilities for maintaining the fleet, maintenance, licensing, making sure people are properly licensed, that they don't expire? Do we provide training for that, if you know?
Again, the short answer to that is no, because some of the people that were hired, again, that I didn't directly hire, came from the First Student Organization, so most of them came with that training already.
But did we evaluate their level of ability or training? Or?
I'm not sure by we, but I did not.
Okay. How about now?
I was not involved in that. So
do we have in-service training for people now?
Absolutely. We're working on training for the drivers, the training staff, the safety staff, and I'm working with the current director for more training as well.
All right. Now, you said, and it's a fair statement, that you didn't want to be you did not want responsibility for what happened prior to September 1st, 2023. But there are weekly meetings with the superintendent for the central office staff, correct?
Yes.
All right, and were you invited to those meetings?
Yes.
And was the budget discussed?
Yes.
Was spending discussed?
It was discussed, yes.
Okay. And you also said a little earlier adequate funding. So when you became interim superintendent on September 1st, did you, and because you knew that there was a significant deficit, 14 million, which now is 18 million, and I don't think we've reached the end yet because we don't have the results of the audit and the investigation by the city solicitor, did you direct staff to immediately compare what happened in FY23 with the FY24 budget? Because at that point, we were only 2 months into the fiscal year. So what executive orders did you give to your team at that point regarding the FY24 budget, given your knowledge of the FY23 overspending?
So with respect to the FY24 budget, we immediately looked at the expenditures, we looked at hiring and the organization structure as a whole, and made some changes and made some pauses on hiring a lot of positions, and so those are the things I started off right away. Again, you're right. Even though, and just to go back a little bit, Councilor Farrell, even though I was in the meetings with the team and the budget was discussed, I didn't have any decisions about what the budget was going to be or how expenditures at all prior to September of this year, last year, I think.
But you would have recommended the transportation budget to the superintendent, correct?
This year or last year?
Well, for both, FY '23 and '24.
Well, the budget was already fixed September 1st. It was already voted on, and it was already fixed, so I wouldn't have any say in changing it.
Right, but it would have been done back in June of '23.
Which I was involved in.
So you had no input whatsoever in the transportation budget back in June '23?
That's correct. There was a time when, again, like you said, I started off with founding the transportation department, if you will, with Aldo. And then I was removed from the transportation department, so I really had no say in really what was going on there for the better part of a year or more. So.
All right. To your knowledge, other than the superintendent who's on paid leave, Mr. Petronio who's on paid leave, and Mr. Correa who's on paid leave, has any other individual associated with the fiscal year '23 deficit been placed on leave or laid off or suffered any disciplinary action?
No.
You said a little earlier with respect to the employment contracts, which Mr. Clarkson found quite onerous on the taxpayers. Mm-hmm. And it was referenced in the Open Architects report that some of the people have not only a pretty significant salary, but they have overtime benefits, they have sick leave benefits, buyback, vacation buyback. But you said something interesting when you were asked, have you done anything to stop that? And if I heard you correctly, I think you said that you weren't even going to make any recommendations, that was the school committee's responsibility.
I did not say that. No, that's not what I said.
Then maybe you could expand on that.
So what I said, and I have made recommendations and have made changes, but again, the benefits are fixed by the school committee. That's what I said. In order to change benefits, particularly for anybody who's already been under contract for several years, that has to be a vote by the school committee to change the benefit policy, and then perhaps renegotiate those contracts with those people. And part of that vote for the school committee was back in 1990, I believe it was, to afford the same benefits to non-union personnel that are afforded to union personnel at management levels.
So have you put together your recommendations for the school committee, because you're coming up into budget time?
Yes.
And obviously they have to factor in.
Yes, I have.
You have?
Yes.
Okay.
And there will be more recommendations coming in the next weeks or month.
Okay. Special education, have we received any letters from DESE or from any other state agency regarding our failure to provide adequate special ed services?
Yes.
All right. Could you expand on that a little bit?
I can't quantify them, but obviously because we were not able to hire the special education teachers, again, due to the budget constraints, we have a lot of students that are required to have special education services that are not getting those services. So what happens next is it goes to what we call compensatory services. At some point, we have to make up in some way all, if not most, of those hours or services for those students. So that meter has been running since September 1st, and it's probably close to $3 million right now. We have contracted with a company that, for about just under $1 million to start providing those services, either evenings, weekends, vacation times, to those students one-on-one. So it's still an obligation. It doesn't matter if it rolls even until the next fiscal year. It's still an obligation we have to fulfill.
All right. Now, you and the mayor and others went into a meeting with the state, and perhaps there's been more than one, I've forgotten. And one of the handouts, well, there was a PowerPoint presentation, and one of the handouts to the state contained this PowerPoint slide, and it's the status of fiscal year '24 budget, schools, projected general fund deficit 25 million, plan to balance, circuit breaker, which for people watching this program is your special education expense reimbursement, 7 million, IDEA, which is your disabled education,
individual disabilities,
individuals, 3.6 million, ESSER 3 funds, which is every student succeeds, 5.1 million, and then budgetary savings, 10 million. With respect to circuit breaker, IDEA fundings, and ESSER 3 fundings, when did those become available?
Well, particularly with the IDA, that was like, again, Councilor Thompson mentioned the grant for the maintenance of effort. So those are tied to that grant. The entitlement grants, Title I, Title III, Title IV, those are entitlement grants that, as a result, finally, of the maintenance of effort, we finally met it because there was several months. Really, we just last month finally met that requirement. So those funds are released now. So they just became available.
Okay, and I'm sorry, I might have missed Councilor Thompson's dialogue with you. What requirements did we have to meet in order to have the funds released?
It's called the maintenance of effort, and essentially, like we just talked about, the net school spending requirement per student, particularly for special education students, had to be at a certain dollar amount. In this case, it was pretty close to $51 million. And we had not met that, and we had to really, again, the team, the cabinet team, Dr. Labwai, went back with his staff and literally line by line and looked at every single service provided to students and that wasn't properly accounted for, that might have been in that 199 account, and actually coded it to the right account so that we eventually did make that threshold, the maintenance of effort. So,
you know, when we were notified we were deficient?
As far as the MOE, the maintenance of effort, we worked on that grant really since September. So we kept working on it and tried to, we went back and forth with Open Architects and DESE to figure out what do we need to do. If it's going to be less than the 50 million, then what's that look like as far as the other grants, and can we just go forward? And they took months, literally, to go back and forth, and because they didn't have an answer. They didn't know what to do. So we finally dug back in and found the right dollar amounts to apply to the right places, and we qualified. We submitted it again, and we qualified for it.
And by the way, the reason I ask is that if this funding had been available, we might have been able to increase the stipend for substitute teachers, and we could have covered classrooms.
You're correct.
We might have been able to offer expanded special ed services.
That's correct.
Because, as you and I know, every day that's lost in a kid's education, you don't get back.
You're right, Councilor Farwell. That, like I said earlier, that money really should be above and beyond our net school spending and not used to close the deficit. Absolutely.
Now, budgetary savings, and I got quite a list of accounts that had been frozen, or I assume are under consideration to be frozen, that do in the aggregate add up to 10 million. Couldn't that have been done earlier in the year? I mean, couldn't we have gone through the budget line item by line item, frozen some items, and then the other issues that I just mentioned, such as special ed
Well,
needs?
we did, and we went back again, and we went at it like 2-3 different times, actually, to really, cut closer and closer to the bone, actually. But we did, and we have been working on it. But again, those are dollars that we're required to spend for students that we're just not spending on students right now. We're using to close the deficit. So, yeah, so, and just to note, those line items are not frozen. We just greatly reduced what was in that line item for the budget. So there's still funds available. For example, we had $2.5 million for computer hardware to purchase laptops to the students. So after many discussions with the cabinet and with the IT director, Dan Vigent, we decided that what can we get by really this year? I know we need to replenish and replace obsolete computers, but we essentially decided we'll all buy enough laptops this year for the new 9th grade class coming in, and we'll have to figure out the rest in the next fiscal year. So we went from $2.5 million in that line item to $500,000. So we took $2 million and put it back toward the deficit.
Now, with respect to the programs that were moved, and I know you didn't make the decision to move them, you now do have the authority to go back to the school committee and say, I think we need to revisit this.
Yes, and I have. We discussed it.
Considering? Is that something that might be cost effective?
We discussed it at the last meeting, again, with executive session, because it impacts, unions. We have to impact Brockton for those things. So once I introduce the plan to them, and there's some back and forth, but I think by and large, those moves will take place. And then, yeah, it'll be public at the next meeting on September, on the 9th of April.
Okay. And I'm getting to the end, so let me ask you this. The meeting that you attended in Boston with the mayor, I believe within the last week of 10 days.
Right.
Was there any mention of the city going bankrupt?
Not really. I mean, the discussion really is, and just to quote Bill Bell from DESI, CFO DESI, we're trying to figure out which problem we're trying to solve. And right now, it looks like we have a solve for 2024. So what is 2025 going to look like, and what's going to be the ask? And we're still solving for that problem. So it's not, they know that there's going to be some money from the state, from somewhere to bail out, and what that will look like and what strings will be attached is still yet to be determined. And the number, what that will look like. Even today's meeting, we're not sure what that number is going to look like.
I missed a question on transportation in my notes. Does the school committee have a policy on sped transportation, a range of costs? For example, if a new student moves into the city and we have to transport that child, the transportation office could call a vendor and they'd say, well, yeah, because it doesn't go out to open competitive bidding. Okay, I'll do it, but it's going to be $800 a day plus whatever it is a mile, or however the fee structure is based. Is there a concrete policy on distance, time, how much we pay the vendor, or is it whatever you can work out with the vendor at the time?
The short answer is no, we do not have a policy or a rate structure, but that is what we're working on and will be in place for September.
Okay. The reason I asked you about the meeting in Boston, and I'm a pretty straightforward person, but I picked up on myself after I heard my colleague, Councilor Thompson, mention about working together. Last Friday, a member of the school committee, and I'll tell you who it is after the meeting, approached a prominent citizen in Brockton and told the citizen, there's no money, the city's going to go bankrupt, the mayor should be fired, the council should be fired. I attended a meeting in Boston. It just went on, and I have to tell you, we're not in the business of scaring people in the city. We're not in the business of maybe dissuading businesses from locating here because they think we're going to go bankrupt. We're not in the business of scaring teachers and staff because they think they might lose their job and the city is going to be bankrupt. And so you have leadership skills because of your military service and your city service. In your dealings with other people, whether it be school committee members or anyone else, I happen to think that political vitriol and polarization doesn't bring people together. I think, if anything, it hardens positions and it makes it very difficult to collaborate. So I filed a report on it. I kept notes because this person was so upset. I filed a report with the city solicitor about it. But it's got to stop. If we're going to get through where we are.
I don't disagree with you, Councilor.
It's got to stop.
Couldn't agree more. We have to work together. We have to send the message out. It's not gloom and doom and we're not going bankrupt. We're working through this. We will get through this. We'll figure it out. We'll work through it, and we'll make sure it doesn't happen again. So that's a message everybody needs to hear, that like I said, we're taking care of 2024 pretty much, and 25 will look very, very different.
All right, so I'm going to finish by saying I support the principal at the high school. I do not think he's going to change the culture of what goes on up there overnight. I think he's going to need all the moral and financial and staff support that he can muster. I know this isn't easy for you to stand there and have us pepper you with questions. I think there'll be a lot more to discuss after the audit and the investigation is done, and I would look forward to having you come back in, and hopefully we'll have a seat for you so you don't have to stand there for
It'll be my pleasure, Councilor. Not a problem.
So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Griffin.
Good evening, Dr. Cobb. How are you?
Good evening, Councilor.
Last time we were here, we spoke briefly about comparing the cost of in-house transportation to contracting it. We're going to put some numbers together. How far along are we, sir?
I have a presentation that I'm presenting tomorrow night, as a matter of fact, to the school committee. Again, it will have to be an executive session because it's bargaining impact for unions. So It's a rough draft, first draft, and obviously it'll be there for them to make comments upon, and then go back and do my homework and make adjustments as necessary. But we're just about there. I think, again, I have a proposal. I think it makes sense and it makes for good fiscal responsibility.
And you were involved in the entire process of purchasing the buses, setting up the transportation?
Initially, yes.
Can I ask you a question? Why didn't the school go with a transportation professional from the outset to run the operation? It seems to me it's a very complex operation, very costly operation. It would seem that type of skill set would be very beneficial to the school department and the city.
Well, to answer your question, there were very few candidates that applied that actually had experience with transportation, either commercial or school transportation. And quite honestly, we thought we had hired a person that we thought had that expertise, and it just didn't work out. So we had to go with Plan B.
Okay, well, Plan B came with some problems.
Plan B actually was for student people that came over to work for us.
Have you looked at putting up maybe another search out to get a transportation professional?
Well, that's what we're working on again with the transportation audit that will take place. We'll have recommendations from them, and we'll work on it from there.
The safety audit that you get the grant for, with former Commissioner Davis heading it up. Has that started yet?
They'll be here. They were on the ground a couple of weeks ago with a team that walked through for the day, and one of the representatives from Ed Davis's company was there. Most of them were DESI representatives. They will be back. We're having another meeting on the 4th, I believe, to kick off the kind of work out the ground rules of what the team is going to be there, and then the follow-on will be the team will be on the ground for a week at the high school. So yes, it's underway.
Okay. Would you be able to provide us a list of department heads' salaries, because the budget season is right upon us right now?
Certainly.
I know I would like to have it. I'm sure my fellow councils would like to have it.
Sure.
Can you provide that to us, sir?
Not a problem.
Thank you. I just want to close with one thing. This is more of a statement than a question, and I mean with all due respect, Dr. Cobb. You said earlier that the school department is not in a crisis. Well, I'm going to make my remarks based on the residents of Ward 3, the parents and students who have contacted me. Clearly, there's a disconnect if you don't believe there's a crisis in the schools right now. There is. There's no way around it, sir. We are dealing with a crisis. So the further we have to work through this, we really have to get moving. Now, some of these consolidations we're talking about, I know it's not an easy task to do, but we really got to put a fine light on it, really drill down on it, because there has to be some type of consolidation, because we're hemorrhaging money on the city side and the school side. We're all in the same, all the money comes from the same pot. Well, we're going to have to make some reductions. It's not going to be easy. It's going to have to be done very strategically and done very in urgency. Because right now, the school year is almost over. And as far as changing things, there really hasn't been a lot as far as consolidation that I've seen.
Well, are you done? Because I would say that's certainly your perspective and your opinion, but again, you're not there every day in the trenches working through all these problems and looking at staff reductions. You know, you can say staff reductions like it's just a dollar amount and it's just a figure, but these are people. And I'm having those difficult meetings with these people to tell them that you're not going to have a job anymore. And so you can't say that we're not doing anything, we don't understand what's going on, because I absolutely do. And I'm doing the job, I'm doing the work. So when you say the school department's in crisis, just like Councilor Farwell just said, I don't want to give the message to the community, to everybody else, that the sky's falling, we don't know what to do about it. And that's absolutely not what's going on. There is a problem, it's serious problems, and we're dealing with them every single day and doing our best to work hard to get it done. In spite of everybody telling us that we're incompetent, we're stupid, we don't know what we're doing, we don't care, we do, and we're working on it.
Maybe you misunderstood me. I was not saying you're incompetent. I must say you're not trying to do a good job.
Yeah, but a lot of people are.
I'm talking
and they're saying that we don't care. But that's what I hear every day.
I just want to say to you, I was elected by the residents of Ward 3. There are quite a few parents in my ward who feel the schools are in a crisis, sir. So it's imperative upon you and everybody in this room that we work through this as quickly as possible.
I couldn't
That's all I'm trying to
agree with
do.
you more, Counselor.
I'm not trying to point fingers. I know you work hard every day, and I have nothing but respect for you. But again, we are in a crisis. There's no getting around that.
No, that's certainly your entitled to your opinion, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Cobb.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Counselor. Council Falwell, I was actually at that meeting in Boston on last Thursday, and I frankly didn't hear any of the, we're all going to get fired from, I thought it was actually a very good meeting, to be honest with
It was
you,
a working meeting.
compared to what I had heard before. I was asked to go, and I went. Yeah, I felt a little small because of all the issues that were told that, you know, mismanaging this, mismanaging that. But I thought it was a very good meeting. At least they gave us some points of, you know, you're not going to get fired this week. You know, come back next time and see what the deal is. But I thought it was a very good meeting, so.
It was a
and
good
no sky
working
was
meeting.
falling.
They really are working with us. Department of Revenue, DESI, everybody's working. Again, the question is, what problem are we trying to solve? And we're still trying to make sure we can solve the right problem.
I just wanted to chime that up just because I was there as well, and along with some of the folks from the city that went up there, there was
I know it's Councilor Griffin's time, but I appreciate that because we owe it to residents to give them information and not engage in scare tactics.
Exactly.
Yeah, to me, it was basically a meeting that, and I don't mean to, because I think the council is done, Council Minicello is next, but to me, it was a meeting that basically asked a lot of questions, but it was not a scary meeting in the sense that, you know, I'd come back and say, let's pack up our bags because it's time for us to move. That was not part of what I heard, at least what I heard, you know. Council Minicello.
Thank you, Mr. President. And good evening, Superintendent Cobbs.
Good evening.
Let me just start out by saying that anything I ask is absolutely not a personal attack. In fact, not too long ago, you know, you supervised the Edison program, and that program was incredible. You graduated over 250 kids, which, when you think about it, is one building at the high school, you know, so that's how many kids successfully were in that Edison night program. Those were students, as you know, who the daytime program didn't work for them, but because of jobs or what have you, or children, raising children, and the night program worked for them, and they got their education, and they were so proud, and I used to love to go to those graduations. Phenomenal, and you were certainly instrumental in that success, because you had a presence. The students knew you cared. You were a moral center, and it was a great program. So let me ask a couple of questions. When did homeroom get eliminated at Brockton High School?
I can't answer that honestly for the exact date, but it's been
In 2019, my daughter, it was her freshman year.
Okay, 2019. And when did I guess these different programs start to enter Brockton High School from the Keith Center, or the closing of the Keith Center?
This school year.
This school year. So would you say that the entry of some of those programs and some of those students mixing into the high school resulted in some, you know, not so good things to happen, and really bring things to a level that we weren't used to at Brockton High School?
Right. It did change the dynamic of the high school, absolutely. And I have to say this, you know, like we've been saying about Brockton High School, there are students that are problematic, that need more support, or need to be someplace else. And it's the same thing with the Edison Day, which is formerly Champion School. There's some great kids there that are trying to do education. But if you think about the Champion School, aka now the Edison Day program, those students chose to be in a smaller school setting, in a different environment, because they knew they were not going to be successful in the large Brockton High School. Yet, here they are, you know. So, yes, it has been problematic. It has changed the dynamic, and it also changed the administrative structure for the building. Because the students on the third floor have their own administrative structure, but then the other administrators on that same building that have other just general high school students have to respond, and they don't know those students necessarily as well as the other administrators for that program do.
So the introduction...
it changed the dynamic, yes, absolutely.
Okay, so the introduction of these different programs certainly have complicated things to some degree.
And we also have the Brockton Virtual Learning Academy there as well. That moved from the Keith building. Actually, yeah.
So would you say then if we could relocate some of these programs, in the past, again, many of these programs, like we know, were in different locations. Brockton High School didn't work for them, or they didn't work for Brockton High School.
Absolutely.
And in the past, things were a little less complicated. But it seems like the merging of all these different programs has had a ripple effect. A ripple effect where you have some school committee people saying, "Bring in the National Guard."
Right.
Well, so to me, that says to me that there's issues here. But that's to me a simple explanation, because I'm always asked, what's going on with Brockton High School from the people, alumni, people that care about Brockton High School. Tom, what is going on with Brockton High School? Mm-hmm. So that's quite simply a very succinct answer. There are different programs that have been added to the high school in the mix, and it's not mixing too well.
And part of, again, to address that, the plan, again, with the moves for this coming school year, we'll rectify that. We'll move the students out of there, place them in other locations, and give them back their school that they want to be in, a smaller school instead of at Brockton High School, and reset the greenhouse at the Brockton High School back to mirror the other three houses.
Okay. Next question. Who is on you? Who helps you formulate a budget? Who is your team that basically helps you formulate a budget in terms of your executive team?
We have Trish, who's our interim school business administrator. I have open architects, consultants, because now they're working directly for me, actually, for the school department instead of for DESE. So those are the main financial people that help me, and Troy, of course. And Troy has been instrumental all along to help figure out the budget, figure out what's going on. I have to say, Troy, in his defense, he's probably learned a lot more about school department operations than he ever wanted to, but he's stepped up and helped us out quite a bit.
So is there anyone from the executive team that assists you with the budget? Well,
yes, of course. Like I mentioned, Dr. Lablois, who's the assistant superintendent for Unified Student Services, he was not just instrumental. Him and his team did the yeoman's work to figure out that maintenance of effort dollars, for that $51 million. So absolutely. So he contributed. Sharon and her department, again, we had to go to teaching and learning and say, hey, I need some more money back. We have $90,000 for library books. We're just not buying library books for the rest of the school year. We'll readdress that next school year. So they went back and looked at every line item as well. And the same, I went to my facilities department, from the tech department, and everybody. So as far as contributing to help, with the budget, those people don't build the budget, but they certainly, we have taken a lot of input from those people to help work on the budget for this year and next year.
Okay. With regard to the busing, so how many large, regular-sized school buses are there, and then how many are there of the smaller school buses?
I get the numbers mixed up, but we have approximately 62 what we call Type A 71-passenger school buses, the large buses, and we have 66. Again, don't quote me on the math. I think 66 are what we call vans, which are half-size school buses that have 29 passengers, depending on the configuration, because some of them have seats for young children and wheelchairs, accessibility, so it cuts down the number of passengers that can ride. And then we have 6 smaller, like Honda minivans, basically. Those are the ones that I'm working on trading out with the new proposal to accommodate the new 7D vans that we'll bring in-house.
Okay.
So 143 vehicles altogether.
So let me ask you this. Again, things are changing every day. What is happening that we now require more smaller buses than the larger buses? It just seems to me, and again, this has nothing to do with you, but what is happening that we now need all these smaller buses? Because it seems like that the smaller buses are expanding and expanding and expanding. Why are more students now I guess, needing to take these smaller buses? What programs are they involved in that require them to have a small bus? And where are these students coming from? You know, what is going on here? Or just, in a nutshell, educate me.
Okay, in a nutshell, like I spoke about earlier with Councilor Thompson, the McKinney-Vento students are door-to-door transport. Special education students with IEPs are
and the McKinney-Vento get the small bus?
Yes.
Okay,
We wouldn't put them
not
on a
outside
large bus.
transportation.
It'd be very inefficient to put them on a larger bus. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
So they go on the vans. We call the 7D vans, essentially. So those students require, and there's a lot of door-to-door transportation. And where are those students coming from? They move to Brockton. They have IEPs, individual education plans. They're immigrant students that have McKinney-Vento services and a myriad of other services. They may need special needs. They need language learning skills.
Right.
So those in-city transportation need to be done by smaller vans. And sometimes, Councilman Minichiello, we use the smaller vans or the half-size bus just because of the streets in Brockton. We can't get a full-size bus through the street.
So this has been one of my pet peeves, okay? And this has got nothing to do with you. But I've always said to the school department, why aren't we creating some sort of an entity, so to speak, in shared driving costs? So I'll give you, I always use this as an example. The Cardinal Cushing Center in Hanover, right? Well, do we send some students there or places like that?
We might. We send students all over in every direction as far as special needs services.
So to me, there should be some clearinghouse or some sort of a pooling center where that small bus is going to go through Abington, Whitman, Rockland, Hanover, and get to Cardinal Cushing.
That's right.
Why aren't we, and no one ever says they're doing this, why aren't we talking to these other communities or talking to the Cardinal Cushing Center and saying, hey, we have a busing crisis here. We need to carpool. We need to share expenses with these with sister communities, brother communities, whatever. Why can't we do that and basically split the cost?
Well, we do. Particularly for special needs students, if they're in a different city where they're residing and they stay in school here, we share the transportation costs with that district.
So we are doing that?
Absolutely. We bill the other district for those.
That's refreshing. Thank you. That's great. And then with respect to, you came on board in September, right, as superintendent. When you came on board, Mr. Petronio, Superintendent Thomas, and Mr. Correa were placed on leave. At that point in time, were there reimbursements? I know that Mr. Petronio and Mr. Correa took care of reimbursements, getting reimbursements for transportation, for SPED, for grants, for all sorts of things. But I kept asking, who's doing this work now? Who's getting those reimbursements? That's big money. Who did it or did people not do it?
Well, no, we still have people in the finance department that have different responsibilities to do some of those things, to accounts receivable, to bill other districts for the services or the transportation. So we still have people doing those things. There was one person in charge of doing it.
Was it done efficiently? Can we compare to make sure and check, basically check our list to say, hey, yeah, we got all the money we needed to get because that contributes to the 23 and 24 budgets. I mean,
believe it or not, Mr. Minichiello, Councilman Minichiello, I had a conversation with Dr. Labdoy last week about are we maximizing our reimbursement and sharing the cost for other districts and getting what we're owed. But we are. We're on it.
These are things that I pointed out a long time ago, okay? And especially with respect to putting in fiscal controls. Back when this came before us. I don't understand how in 24 things are as bad or worse than 23. I just can't comprehend that because we knew that the chicken was out of the barn. So I don't get it. I still won't get it. And when I hear people say about, we need adequate funding, yes, we need adequate funding. However, we need to spend responsibly the monies that we have, and we need to get reimbursement for the monies we're entitled to. And if these things aren't being done, how dare people say we need adequate funding? The taxpayers basically are going to look at us saying, adequate funding? You people, don't get the money you're entitled to, and you want us to pay more money? I mean, hello. I mean, do you understand the issue that, the talking out of both sides of the mouth? It's like, whoa, adequate funding, sure, but are we getting the dollars and being as efficient as we could have been? I don't think so.
Well, again, you may or may not be correct. Again, since I've taken over, we are looking at those things, and every penny that we can get reimbursed for, that we can charge other districts, that we can get reimbursed for from DESI or the government, we do. And as well, millions and millions and millions of dollars in grants that we apply for to help supplement the budget. The truth of the matter is, the budget, whether you want to question the fiscal management of responsibilities of what the money that was funded, the budget is inadequate. The net school spending should be, as Councilor Thompson said, it's millions and millions of dollars more, not tens of millions of dollars more than what was allocated. So you'll get those numbers soon. DESI will make it public, what's going to happen for 2024 and 25, and they're one of the sticking questions. If you ask Council President Rodriguez, they ask the question at least 6 times. You think at least 6 times? What about the net school spending? We need to focus on the net school spending. It's not adequate. The net school spending. How many times do you think? Like a half dozen times at least. And again today, that's still a focus on net school spending, and they understand that you're not meeting your required net school spending of $19,000 per student.
With respect to I know the difference between doing traffic and doing crossing guard duty.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Are there any meetings that what I used to, it wasn't too long that I was on, wasn't on the school committee, so I would call up and I would say, hey, the busy schools obviously are where you need traffic. And at some point, the custodians were doing that until one time when a police officer, I'm not sure if he was a trooper, I think he was a trooper, basically, went off and
what are you doing?
Right, and then it all stopped in terms of...
It's a union grievance, absolutely.
Right, yeah, exactly. So, however, what I always would say is that, well, why can't we try to tap into the people that are on duty, and for 15 lousy minutes, because that's all it is, 15, 20 minutes.
We do, but sometimes, Brockton, you have to understand, and because you were on the school committee for many years, the Brockton School Police are part of the Brockton Police, so they have to respond in the morning to calls, anything else that's going on. So if they're supposed to be at that detail to do it, for traffic, and they get a call, they have to leave.
I understand that.
And at least they're shorthanded sometimes.
So is there adequate conversation between, your office and the mayor and the chief of police to coordinate this stuff? I mean, I just have a funny feeling that a little bit more in terms of coordinating officers that are on duty could be done for these, for North Quincy Street, right? For the George School.
For Plain Street, for the Davis School.
For the Hancock School. For the elementary schools that are on the busy street.
Colonel Bell Street for the George.
Exactly.
Those are hot spots every morning.
In the afternoon, too. And it's a nightmare with regard to...
And exacerbated by snow or weather. Absolutely.
True. But I guess all I'm asking you to do is, could you please coordinate a little bit more or be a nag in terms of the city to get these people that are already on duty to fill those slots, because like you said,
we do. And again,
it's outrageous.
Like I said earlier, we're down 6 officers, so we have 10 now to cover all 22 locations, actually 26 locations, but not all of them have to be covered every time. But at Brockton High School usually takes 2 officers, so that takes up a good portion of the detail. So I have conversations with Sergeant Livingston and Chief Perez all the time, and we are looking at ways that we can stretch the dollar, and we cut out a lot of the police details, and by agreement that we felt weren't necessary.
In other communities, in some cities, they're not paying detail officers to come and do that. Maybe they're not as busy as Brockton. But we really need to utilize the people that are on duty for those short stints.
That you understand how the detail officers work. If there's supposed to be a detail at a school and say school police are called away and Brockton police maybe be responding to the same incident, or they just don't have the personnel to cover the detail, it goes out to state police or to other cities surrounding towns to cover that detail at at their cost.
Okay. Reading in the paper the other day about Ed Davis, right? How's that going?
So we're just getting underway with that. They've come out for a site visit once already with the DESI folks, a team of about 8 people that came and spent the day at the high school from when the kids arrived in the morning until they left in the afternoon. In conversation with them now to schedule the next step, which is a meeting to talk about, to plan out, the logistics of the full site visit survey. So that meeting is on the 4th, and then we'll set a date for them to start, which should be in the next week or two, to have the full team on ground for a week.
And why do we need an Ed Davis? Why do we not have people in-house that can come up with...
I don't have any the short answer to that, Councilman Minicello, don't have anybody qualified to do it. And we need a security expert to do it, or a security team, of experts to do the job appropriately.
Now, is he going to be dealing with discipline?
And when Chief Perez and I have been having lots of conversations, we met with the mayor, and one of the first things she said is, I'm not a security expert, and you need to hire a security expert. I don't have a security expert on staff, and I'm not a security expert either. Just because you're a police officer or military, whatever, doesn't necessarily qualify you as a security expert. There's a lot more that goes into the job.
And the funding for this, is there any type of grant that's going to pay for this, or is it...
Well, DESI's paying for it.
Okay. Oh, this is the DESI.
They're paying the whole bill. It's $83,000. They're paying for the audit.
So this is the DESI money that's going to this?
Yes.
Okay,
Absolutely.
well, that's refreshing. That's great.
Can't beat that.
And when do you think that the plan will arrive, so to speak?
It's required to be in place by the MOA that we have with DESI by the end of June 30th.
Okay. And when do you think that there'll be some changes at the high school with regard to some programs that I guess you said that you would agree that aren't suited for the high school? Will that be in the next
For September.
September? And how many programs are you recommending to be moved? And who else is recommending those? Is it you or is it...
All the cabinet. We spent probably the better part of 2 months looking at all the logistics of the moves and what schools we need to move and what schools we need to, again, reconstitute that we don't have services for anymore. And we looked at really all the locations and we came up with a plan that for the school moves. So it wasn't just me, it was a group effort, and we really dug in and spent a lot of time in thinking about the moves. So the BVLA, it's just a high school right now, will be relocated, and the Edison Day program will be relocated. Whether or not we call it Edison Day again, who knows, but probably not, because it's really not really much associated with Edison Academy. The evening program has been there for years. It's just kind of in the same building in a similar name. So.
The evening program has never really had an issue at all.
It ran very well. We're leaving it alone. We're not touching that program.
Yeah, I mean, but who decided that it would be a good thing to put these programs here? I mean,
wasn't my decision.
Well, I mean, I guess.
It was before me. So, but I mean, it was before I had any say in really as far as deciding.
Is it by consensus on the executive team? I mean,
I can't really answer that question. Sorry.
Well, again, and I'll say it again publicly, the school committee got pilloried for what's going on at Brockton High School. However, obviously, the school committee wasn't in the executive team meetings saying, bring all these programs at Brockton High School. So to me, the responsibility is certainly shared amongst people that have gotten off scot-free. And the poor school committee and the city council as well has, basically the finger pointing over here and over there. The quote so-called professionals who are supposed to make recommendations that are sound and logical, obviously didn't. I mean, I could sense that this is what happened at Brockton High School. Now, Dr. Zakowicz was at Brockton High School, recommending and recommending, I guess, change and things to implement and all that stuff. What has been adopted from her, I guess, consulting work over at Brockton High School?
I don't have the answer to that question.
Can we find out? I mean, what has been utilized, and implemented? Is that a fair question, or? Because obviously there was a cost to it, right? I mean, so. Okay. I think that's it. And I guess I'm just going to follow up with this. If you could get some data for me in terms of making, I just want to be able to have sort of a report card to see how much we've received for reimbursements to make sure that we have received everything we're supposed to receive. Because if we're leaving stuff on the table, someone needs to, if it's still obtainable, if we can still recoup that money, we should recoup that money before we start saying, well, we need more money. I get it. We certainly could. We have to spend the money smarter. We have to contribute more money, but we also have to spend the money smartly. And I don't think the money's been spent smartly, or as smartly as it could have been spent. You know,
Well, again, I can't speak to past practices, but like I said earlier, I did ask Dr. Lablouire to put those numbers together and look at every dollar that we need to recoup from other districts. So I will, when that report is completed, I'll give you a copy of it.
All right. Well, Mr. Cobb, Superintendent Cobbs, I thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Menzicello. Thank you.
All set. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Tixer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Dr. Cobb. I need a clarification. You said it's about $5 million for 10 buses?
If we purchase them outright, just about somewhere around there, that might have been, don't quote me more or less, but I'm trying to picture the slide in my head to buy. So it's just to clarify, it's 16 new vehicles altogether. But part of them will be a trade-in, so we'll realize some money back on the ones we're trading in to put towards a new lease. So it'll be this current budget cycle. We have about $350,000 in the budget to purchase new vehicles. With the lease program for all the new vehicles, our total expenditure per year will be about $436,000. So about $82,000 more than what we actually budgeted for last school year. So we can do it very affordably, and then again, take a lot of transportation that we're doing across the district, one-to-one, and out of district, and back in-house.
So it's approximately about.
So to buy them outright, it's a little over $5 million. To lease them, it's $5 million over the lease term. The lease about almost with interest about almost $5.5 million. So
to buy them outright, right?
To buy them outright.
So it's about $500,000 per bus.
Yeah, each bus. Well, the larger buses are about $138,000, and the smaller buses are about $120,000.
$138 for the
large 71 passengers.
So it's not $500,000 then.
No, but again, there's 6 of those buses. There's 6 of the large buses, 5 of the half-bus-type buses, and 5 of the 7D vans. 16 vehicles altogether.
Oh, so it's 16, it's not 10.
Right.
Okay.
Right. So the purchase well, again, part of it won't be a trade-in, so we won't purchase 16 outright. We'll purchase 10 after the trade-in.
So
it's about outright to purchase a little over $5 million.
Right now, we own.
Whether or not we want to take a $5 million hit or do the lease program, and again, you'll see the proposal soon. But I would recommend doing the lease program because what happened when we started the bus department, we purchased 1 year half of the large yellow buses that we need, and then we had a hybrid contract with First Student. In the second year, we purchased, quote, the other half of the fleet, which we really didn't purchase enough at the time. And what we didn't do was look at the private transportation then and propose to the school committee and to the city council that we invest in those 7D vans so we could take a lot of that, because they're almost equal, you know, the amount of money that we were spending on the lease, not the lease, the contract for a student, to what we were paying out for the private vans and transportation. They're almost about the same. So that should have been, you know, recognized that that's where you get the double transportation cost, because they're almost equal, you know, the private transportation. And so we should have planned to buy those 7D vans and hire the drivers to bring that in-house right from the start. And the third piece of it is we should have planned for obsolescence for the buses and rotate, because we're at the point in another 2 or 3 years that some of the buses they'll be at the right time to trade in to renew the bus fleet with a lease program that'll be built in.
So, what I'm understanding, it's smart to lease them than buy them.
Right. I would rather lease them.
Better.
Right.
Why lease them, though?
Because like I just said, we automatically build in to renew the fleet and put in updated electronics and cameras and everything else and communications and GPS locations and that kind of stuff. And we have newer buses. You know, when we leased with First Student, their buses were very old and they were not dependable and all our buses, they're gas vehicles and they have, except for one, and they have air conditioning and heating for the whole bus and up state-of-the-art communications and getting electronics. So that's why when it's time, you know, the useful life of the bus is between 5 and 8 years, so we have some time. But when we trade those in, it'll be still at a point where they'll have some value, and we'll be able to use that money towards the new leases.
Out of the 143 bus that we own and lease, how many do we lease?
So how many do we need?
No, how many bus do we lease out of the 143 bus?
I am not understanding you.
400.
So we own 143 bus.
Right.
Do we own it right, or do we lease some?
We don't lease any right now.
Oh, we don't lease any right now. Okay.
Sorry, I didn't understand you. I guess that I have a hearing loss.
No, it's a problem. So on the deficit, Mr. Cobb, we really put the holes on the deficit is the transportation. If you want it.
Yeah, I mean, that's debatable, but yeah, it certainly contributed quite a bit to the deficit. Yeah, yes, because again, particularly the out-of-district cost for the transportation, absolutely. If we didn't have the out-of-district costs and the McKinney-Vento costs, we would reduce immediately by about $7 million the cost of transportation.
I know it was a decision, I don't know if it was a smart decision, to go and for the city and the school department to purchase the bus and have our own transportation. I know the First Student, they were going up every year. There was a percent. But it's like everything else.
Absolutely.
Yeah, in life, everything's going up. Today, if you would ask me or Dr. Cobb if it was a smart decision, I would say no. But back then, do you think it was the right decision to do it?
I thought it was back then, and I still think it is now.
Even today, it's the right decision.
Absolutely. It should have, to answer your question, it should have been better managed, and it should have been better costed out, but I still think it's the right decision. Absolutely. Because there's a lot of costs that are associated with transporting students right now. You know, everybody knows the to and from school and the special transportation in and out of district. But the special transportation was not in the contract with First Student, and that was around $14 million or so a year, and going to go up by 5 to 10% every year. What's not included with that First Student contract for the yellow buses was all the extracurricular things, like the band and the ROTC and the athletic events and out of district. All those things were extra charges from First Student that people didn't realize that's part of everybody saw the contract number for $14 million or so, but not all those other associated costs, which could be more $1 million or $2 as well, because they just billed us what was in the contractual rate at the time for those extracurricular transports.
No, I get that. But you got to also, now we got all those employees, it belongs to the city or school department.
Mm-hmm.
Now we got to think about the health insurance,
yep,
retirement, all this.
Mm-hmm.
It still makes sense for us to own our own transportation.
We would pay that anyway, which is built into the contract. At least this way, the city can negotiate what the health insurance rates and the dental insurance rates are and all those things with the contract. It's whatever they gave us.
So there was no
negotiations. No,
negotiation because there was only one.
And it's not necessarily in their best interest to negotiate better prices with their health providers either. So we're stuck with whatever they give us.
Thank you, Mr. Cobb. Dr. Cobb.
You're welcome, Councilor.
Thank you, Chair.
Councilor Ezek.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, Dr. Cobbs, and I'm going to try not to be repetitive.
I'm about to say good morning, Councilor.
Then we'll say good morning if that's the case. So, a couple of questions. First of all, one of the most important questions that I would like answered is, we seem to do a lot of moving around. I remember when, we moved the students out of what I'll always call the old high school, and to the May Center because of the new public safety building. That cost us, I remember you quoted, I don't know what it ended up costing us, but I remember you saying it was going to cost us between $1 to $2 million to move them. I don't know what it ended up costing, but that isn't the case right now. And then to hear that they've been moved out of there.
Can I just add, that move was very expensive because we had to close the building, so we had to take out a lot of electronics and everything else. The moves usually aren't that expensive, but that particular move was because we took cameras, we took doorknobs, we took everything out of the building. So that move, so we could salvage some of those things that we'll be using in the Huntington building, all the locks and doorknobs and things. So that was expensive for that particular move, yeah.
So that's understandable. So where I'm leading to is there's a lot of moving around. Do you have a committee? Is it your cabinet?
Right.
Or do you have somebody that's advising you? Because it seems like, we keep renovating schools. We renovated the B.B. Russell. We put the pre-K in there. Then we put kindergarten, I think. Now it's something else. We're turning it into something for older students. We're spending a lot of money and moving around. So who makes these decisions? Who's making them?
This year, I am in my cabinet, and we worked very hard to make the moves, the last move, that we're not, so we don't have to do this every summer. Believe me, I understand, because as the Deputy Superintendent for Operations, I had to do the logistics for all those moves and plan and make sure we were ready, buildings were ready to open in September. This new set of moves, final set of moves, if you will, and again, we're forced to move. We don't have any choice to get out of the Westgate building. Will be the last moves. We're not moving again next summer unless something extraordinary happens. We're not moving again for the next 3 to 5 years or more.
So I understand it's your decision, but do you have somebody that's keeping, advising you? Is it somebody that's working with you to make sure that?
We work with the cabinet, and again, a lot of the really heavy emphasis comes from the Teaching and Learning Department and Deputy Wolder and actually all of them. Dr. Spalding with the pre-K to 5 and Dr. Connors with the 6 to 12 and Dr. Lavalois for all the special needs students. So it's a combination of expertise and experience and what the needs are and how we can meet the needs of those students going into the future. Again, not move again. This is it. We don't.
And I put my faith in you and your cabinet, and this is, it's a big
really
job.
Good team. Sorry to interrupt you, but it's a really good team. They're really talented, they're really engaged, and they're experienced, and they're educated.
Yeah, I have no doubt in that. I know there's a few doctors in your team and all that, but it's just, I think we just want to make sure we're not wasting any more money. I just happened to be at the Huntington School last week, and there were a lot of facility trucks there, and they're working inside the building. We've closed that building a few times, so I just want to make sure we're just not wasting any more money, moving any more kids.
I actually walked through it yesterday. If you get a chance, I'll be happy to walk through with you. They're doing an amazing job. And again, you have to think about it, Councilor Isaac, that if we didn't have the facility staff to do that, we'd be contracting that work out at what the prevailing wage rate is, which would be astronomical. They work as their shift. They work in the evenings, during the school year, and then in the summer they'll work days. So,
I appreciated that it's being done in-house. I just want to make sure that, that we're not wasting any more money with the moving around.
I don't plan on wasting a dime. I plan on spending every dime on the students that I possibly can, but we do have to operate the district and take care of business. So.
Okay, and I'm all about, spending money to save money. That's why we we voted and supported the school buses, and I know that's been discussed a lot this evening. I want to make sure we're making the right decisions with the school buses. There is a question that came to me, the bus drivers, they work in the morning, they take the kids, drop them off at multiple schools. I know they start out with the high school because that's the earliest school, and then they finished with the students that start later. What do these bus drivers do during the day when they're not transporting kids? Can we use them?
Essentially, they're pretty much idle, except for that we have a group of drivers that they bid on what we call the mid routes, the other, things that happen in between those tiers. We have 3 tiers in the morning, the high school, the middle school, and then the elementary and preschool, and then reverse in the afternoon, the high school, it's the same thing. But in middays, there are other routes that they need to run for services, and some of the drivers do those, and again, through the union, they have to bid on it, and seniority gets the route. So we're working on a plan to hopefully maybe utilize more of them during that time, so they're not sitting idle, because you're right, we do have to pay them.
That would be great.
By contract, we have to pay them anyway, but I can't go too much into that, obviously, because it would involve union negotiations, but.
Sure, but I think that would be great.
We have a plan. We're working on how we can better utilize them and be more efficient.
That sounds really great. So I'm just, one of the, I often wonder, like, who's working on what teams, and if we're out, just like not moving students around that much. We know as a city that we could save money by housing our own buses, and I know we've looked at purchasing property, which was, right now, thank God we didn't go with the proposal that was a year ago around this time. I think that came to us.
That would have been tight to work that out.
It would, so I'm glad we didn't go that route, but I have proposed to the mayor and some school committee members that, just driving around, we have a huge lot that's over on the east side, the old Crystal's lot that's owned by the state, that hopefully someday we can acquire.
Actually, I am in conversation with Representative Dubois to try to figure that out and work that. So
I'm happy to hear
she's kind of on board and working with the state to help us to see if we can acquire that property.
Very good, and whatever you need from our end, as I mentioned to the mayor and some of the school committee members, that whatever we need to do, I think, whatever help we can get from the state, this would be temporary, of course, but I think we have to think creatively together and to find some sort of solutions just to be able to fill the deficit. But, once again, I know it's a big job, a lot of stuff,
There's a lot of work, but there's a lot in the works that you can see from your question, where the same things that you're thinking about and questions we're asking, we're actually working on, those kind of solutions.
I'm happy to hear that. Last question. Enforcement. I'm going to be honest with you. At the beginning of this school year, I was disappointed when I attended one of the school committee meetings, and, I realized that the policies and procedures, or, the student handbook, whatever, for the students, some of the policies weren't being followed, weren't being enforced. Where are we with the dress code, smoking, leaving the school?
Well, which one do you want to address? Once
again, it's getting late.
With the addition of Principal McCaskill, who's outstanding, him and his staff, again, they have all new leadership staff at the school, and so smoking, vaping, kids are being suspended every day. You just don't see them. The school committee members get a report every day, a confidential report, and it talks about whatever happened, fights or smoking or vaping or bringing drugs to school, and they also get a report on the disciplinary actions that are in process. I meet every 2 weeks. We meet with the DA's office, the parole office, probation office, and it's called the CBJJ, Community-Based Juvenile Justice Program, and we review. There are 11 cases that we reviewed the last time we met, and the students that are in the criminal justice system. Some are on home confinement because, some are incarcerated. Some will, so they're in very different stages. Some have been convicted, some have been and waiting for sentencing. So, and again, they're either at home with services, where they're ankle monitor, they're in DYS lockup, but again, I just want to remind everybody that we're still, by 222, required to educate those students wherever they are. So But that's, that's part of the, so they do face disciplinary actions. They can be excluded from school. They can be suspended for short-term or longer-term suspension. But regardless, as 222 says, we're supposed to try other things before we go to, suspension or exclusion, which used to be called expulsion. And even when you get to that point, we're still responsible to educate them.
Thank you. So are we enforcing the dress code?
Yeah, we are. And again, as Principal McCaskill mentioned at the last school committee meeting, it's March. And, some of the egregious things, I mean, I used to walk young ladies down to the office, and we have these T-shirts for them to put on because of these shirts that are cut off. And that's probably the biggest part of the dress code besides, the headphones and things. So it's something that he's working on with the team to enforce, but, it'll be a reset for September, and we'll start off with the pouches for the cell phones, and it's easier to start off with the policy in place than to try to, like, mid-year catch up with everybody and
I understand. I just think we need to be strict and we need to follow. If policies are set in place, we need to reinforce them and
I agree, but, there was a time when, at the high school, and again, before 222, there was a zero tolerance policy, and students were suspended daily for, and I wouldn't say not necessarily things that they can't get suspended for now. For instance, there was a demerit system, still is a demerit system, but it was an automatic suspension after an accumulation of so many demerits. I remember being in homeroom, and one of the teachers would walk in, one of the floor teachers would walk in and say, Shirley Azak, come with me, it's accumulation of demerits, and you get suspended for a day or so. We don't do that anymore, and we can't do that anymore by 222. But students that are found in violation of the code of discipline, whether it's dress code or smoking or vaping or fighting or anything else, they are disciplined through the discipline process.
I think that's what we need to, because we also need to protect the kids that are following the rules.
I 100% agree.
And just a correction earlier when Councilman Minicello asked what year homerooms were, were no longer, it was 2017. It was around 2017, 2018. I made a mistake with that, but that's when they were removed. Thank you, Dr. Cobbs.
That's
Thank
the
you,
way,
Mr.
just
Chairman.
to address that, the way again, with the union negotiations, we're working on bringing that back and changing the high school schedule. But realistically, because there's in the contract, there's a cutoff date for when we can implement it for the following school year. So we're really now looking at 26 school year to implement it. So, but we'll have, by February, we'll have it solidified and the schedule voted on and the MOA in place for it. It will be actually part of the next CBA collective bargaining agreement process. So.
Thank you, Dr. Cobbs.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Madam Council. I guess with last but not least, Councilor Tavares, which means that every single councilor has asked a question. Hopefully, your questions were your second questions were kind of answered by the questions from your fellow councilors, so we don't have to go through another second round of this thing. Councilor Tavares. Councilor Tavares.
Please don't feel like your time has to be quick.
Well, the job of the superintendent is like a politician. You have
it never ends.
Swing whichever direction the wind is blowing. So.
Exactly right. It never ends. I'm here to answer all your questions that you need as best I can. So.
Yeah, no?
All right, thank you
Councilor
so much
Tavares,
for
go ahead.
that. And actually, it's not a question, because actually my questions all been asked, and then I think you did answer mostly. Just a comment. I know sometimes, things right now is kind of overburdened. Everybody is kind of acting up. But I just to have some comments a little about the behavior a little bit in this room sometime when the folks come here, when we ask a lot of questions, sometimes they feel it's a personal question. I hope like nobody feels it's not a personal question, because we here, we've been elected by the taxpayer. And our job here is to ask the question. And when we ask the question, we like to get the answer. Because when we get the answer, then when the taxpayer asks us any question, we know how to answer them, because we get paid by them. Second, most of the time, every time people come here, when we ask the question, they never have the answer. Because if we file resolve, it's enough time for you guys to prepare to come here. and to answer the question. I just sometimes I don't feel like a little confused most of the time when the question has been asked. The answer always I don't know or I don't want to answer it. That makes our job not easy. Because if you don't know the answer, we're not going to know either. Like, for example, like, if you literally hire someone, you're going to be in charge this. That means if you're in charge, you must know everything because you are responsible. You are in charge.
I would beg to differ with that.
And then, like, it's not only you, basically. That's why I said I just have this comment.
I understand the concept of what you're saying.
Correct. Through my observation, most of the time, the answer has not been an answer. And then I think that's not fair for us, make our job so complicated. Because our job here is to kind of like, understand, work together, and delegate, and figure it out what the problem is to solve. But whatever people is in charge, if they don't know how to answer the question, meaning like, oh, they don't care, or they just like, okay, here you go, I'm here, or I don't know what I'm doing. That's what it looks like. And then for us, the same thing. They're going to be like, okay, for some reason, those elected officials don't know what they're doing. You know what I mean? That means we all look, we don't know what we're doing. Because that's why you got like, boss, or like, supervise, like each person is responsible for one thing. That means each person, whatever is responsible for one thing, must know what they're doing. That's all I kind of have for tonight. But like, I hope actually it's for everybody, whatever come here, to prepare, try to get the answer most they can't. When we ask the question, nothing's personal, because we're here, we got paid through the taxpayer, we got to work from them, and we need to show like we work.
Okay, may I respond?
Yes.
Okay, so first of all, when you say don't take it personal, I don't take questions personal. I do take comments such as the school department just doesn't get it, the department, they don't care, your attitude seems like you don't understand what's going on, you don't care. I care deeply about this job, and more importantly, I care deeply about the students and the staff that I'm responsible for. Over 18,000 people, every single day. I'm here doing the job in the cabinet, my team is here doing the job. So we care, and when we have people, we get insults all the time, we get emails, we get letters just like you do, saying you should do this, or you should do that, or you shouldn't do that, you don't know what you're doing. It does hurt, it is personal. So if you care about your job, and you want to do your job well, it is personal. So that said, I forget the other part of your comment. It's like it's impossible to come here with all you people sitting here and have answers to all your questions, anticipate what the question you're going to ask. I don't think any one of you could stand here and answer every question that we all had just threw at you just like that. But like Councilman Castro, she told me about the resolve. I said, well, what are you going to ask me? What question do you need me to answer? And she sent me her questions, and I think I answered all of your questions that that I had time to prepare and go find the numbers. That's how I knew it. It was $540,000 worth of details and $14,000 worth of details and $543,000 worth of crossing guard expenses. So I had the time to research and ask my people, what about this? That's how I knew about how many students we enrolled and how many students we enrolled for multilingual learners since July. So it's impossible to come here and answer all the questions that you have when there's no way to know what you're going to ask me. Okay, for anybody standing here. So you have to realize it's not where we don't know our job and we're trying to dodge the question. And sometimes the questions really are, like the ones I said, I don't know. I wasn't responsible for the budget between 2022 and 2023. Even though, yes, I was a deputy superintendent, I just wasn't involved in those discussions and decisions. So I can't answer to those things. And just like with Dr. Zakowicz, I can't answer to her what she did or didn't do for the school because I wasn't there and I wasn't involved in those decisions. So it's not that we're trying to dodge. And the other part of it is sometimes to answer the question, it gets into an area that we like Councilor Thompson was talking about, the property we're looking at to acquire for the bus depot. We don't want to talk about that publicly yet. We just can't because it's going to cause problems. Or there's union negotiations that may be impacted. So when they say I can't answer that question, that's where that comes from. So it's not trying to avoid you, not trying to play stupid, just trying to say, hey, I can answer it, I can't, and I can get back to you with the information if now that I know what you're looking for.
Actually, it totally makes sense. Actually, I think we all, when we file resolve, the way you're saying Susie did it to you, I think that's because I see you answer all the question. I think when we file resolve, we all prepare the question before anyone come here.
That'd be very helpful.
Prepare, do room work and research, and that will facilitate it for everyone.
And I'll always come prepared if I know what you're going to ask me. And I'll
we should
absolutely.
all
Again,
discuss
if I
about
can't
it.
answer it because of either legal problems or union issues, I won't
That
answer.
makes sense. All right, that's all I have, and now I understand,
Thank you.
and I think we can change the routine.
Thank you.
All right, that's all. Thank you.
Are we good?
Motion to recommend favorably back to the full city council.
On the motion,
On the
On the motion.
Dr. Cobbs, here, we'll see if you can answer this question. I'm over here.
No, too
So
late.
I understand that last week at school committee, of course, we're all thrilled about the success of the drama department and with Charlie's aunt
Yes.
winning the states. And so I understand that you said at the meeting that perhaps you would arrange for one more performance.
Yeah, that's not me. I think they said they're going to do it one more time and then
Yeah.
before they retire for the season. So I'll be happy. I'll let you know when.
Does somebody let us
after.
know?
Yes.
Okay. And so then I
Absolutely.
just.
But I haven't seen it myself. I want to be there. for
Yeah,
this
me
time to
too.
see it.
And so I just wanted to say, you've been standing here a long time taking our questions. Your success and the success of the school committee is our success, and we care so much. And
Exactly.
so I want to thank you on behalf of all of us for your time and for your preparation. We may have you back in again there, you've been warned. And
Thanks.
and so I guess we have a motion properly
I'll have the
made
table and chair
seconded.
out that night.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I think we have one more, just on the motion, kind of
Yes, just
this long.
one final question with 5 subparts, okay? No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding, Mr. President. What is the morale at the high school now with the staff and the teachers?
It's mixed. There's still some people that feel like when are they gonna fix this and do something overnight to change the school? But I think Principal McCaskill and his leadership team, every day, it's making a difference. Every single day. You've seen some of the publications that again, my communications director put out because we had nobody do that before about all the good things that are happening. It didn't just happen at WBC, walking to the school and say, hey, can I spend 2 days here? Myself and my communications director arranged that, and we said, well, what are you going to do? What are you going to ask us? What about, so we had to work out the logistics. Same thing with the drama club, same thing with, all those things didn't just get in, the good stuff is not getting in the paper by itself. Anybody can find the bad stuff because somebody sent out a video. So that's what the communication director is for. That job is an essential job for the school district because every school, every day has a lot of great things going on in this building, and we need to make sure everybody knows about that as well as fights at the Brockton High School or security issues.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President.
So the morale is improving every day, I think.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Good
Superintendent.
night, counselors.
Good night.
Thank you, Dr. Cobb.
A motion has been properly made and second. All those in favor recommending it? All those opposed? It carries. Councilors, I guess that, go ahead, Mr. Clerk. You're supposed to say, that's your line, right? This is the last item on the...
That was the last item. It's all yours.
Okay. Does anybody want any council recognition? Go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to make an announcement. Father Bills has approached me. They want to put an additional 31 units of permanent housing right next to the roadway, which is the old Carlton House. It's going to be a long process. This will just be the beginning. They've asked to have a public meeting on Tuesday, April 30th at 7 p.m. at the administration offices and 460 Belmont Street. I would like to have a lot of Ward 3 residents come to this meeting so we can get all the information we need and see which way we really want to go with this, whatever direction it is. But again, that's Tuesday, April 30th, the administration office of Father Bill's Mainspring on Belmont Street at 7 o'clock. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilor. Anyone else? Oh, Councilor Lally.
Moment of personal privilege, Mr. Chairman?
Absolutely.
I just felt the body would be remiss if we did not acknowledge and thank Superintendent Mike Thomas for being here from the start of the meeting. Just to be present. So I just wanted to acknowledge that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilor. Anyone else? Well, I have a couple. I just want to remind everybody that resumes and intentions for the school committee position in Ward 1 are due by April 5th at 4:30 p.m. to the clerk. Next week, we have 2 meetings. We have the regular council meeting on Monday, and then we'll have the meeting on the 11th, which is the joint convention between the school committee, the city council, and the mayor to basically select the replacement of the school committee member from Ward 1. So, and that will take place at 6 o'clock right here in our chambers. Anything else?
Economic development.
One other item.
One other item? Go ahead.
Oh, yeah. We're going to be.
You don't have to stand. You can
We're going to be scheduling a meeting on the 10th for the Economic Development Subcommittee at 6 o'clock here at the city. Yes. Yeah, I'm working with Rob May on that. So. Okay.
Anything else? Having no further business for the citizens of this city or the residents of our city, this meeting is adjourned.